Nothing like seeing a shirtless Electro Wizard to start your morning, right, Eric? Welcome, everybody, Clash Royale fans all over the world, to Gamestars League. We are in our international finals. We're still in the group stage here. We got a few more days till we get through to give away $30,000 this weekend. Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Guy. Joining me today is Eric Benemu, our former world champion head coach. And Eric, we had a great day of action yesterday. 5 best of 5s back to back to back to back. And they were really great here. A big part of that was how these guys played through some pretty tough matchups.
Yeah, yesterday we had a little bit of everything. We had some very close sets, we had some 3-0s, and then we had great comebacks from the losers bracket, from the lower bracket, better said. We had everything, and those matchups were a lot of the reason why some of these players ended up in the lower bracket early on with that one bridge spam type of deck. Then he was able to adapt to it. So deck choice is so important.
Deck choice is very important here in Gamestars League. Every single player that competes brings 3 decks to the competition. Those 3 decks can have 6 of the same cards, but 2 unique cards in every single deck, and they must win with all 3 decks. These were the most popular cards yesterday. No surprise seeing the E-Barb still out there. The Mother Witch looks like she's rearing her head back out after maybe hiding away for a couple weeks, being overused. But the Fish Boy, Eric, Fish Boy was kind of everywhere yesterday.
Yeah, it's that shift in the meta that we spoke about so long ago, that we were going to have the early meta, the mid meta, and then that adaptation to everything, and we would have the best decks. And I think he's just so useful right now with everything that we've seen. It also forces opponents out of using the E-Giant. Once that Fisherman is in play, you either have to lightning it every single time, or it's going to bring that E-Giant onto your tower, making it useless. A lot of mortar as well. And I think it's just all about the time that you have right now with the balance changes taking this long allows for the meta to end up in a place where, okay, this is the absolute best decks in the game right now. This is what you have to use.
So those are the decks. These are the players. Yesterday we saw the 4 players from Group A go head to head. Hugo was the winner of the day. In Thrill and him will be moving on to our international finals this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Best of 7s all day Saturday and Sunday to give away the better part of that $30,000. But these guys all have a chance to win a grand here or there just by qualifying. So-called Eternity, One Hive Hunter, and Roofy will be up for Group B today. Best of 5s all the way across the board, 5 matches. And for these guys, it's been a very different story for a lot of them. Roofy was competing last week. Eternity was competing 2 weeks ago. One Hive Hunter and SoCal haven't competed back since April and the very beginning of May.
Yeah, and even though SoCal was the player that did move on early on in this group, I think the 2 clear favorites here do end up being Eternity and One Hive, and I'm really excited to possibly see that match, just because yesterday we saw Hugo's experience come into play that much. Maybe Eternity needed to adapt a little bit more into this format, but if he did, and he's not just bringing us those golem decks, it could be a very strong group.
Yeah, it's been a big change from what we saw deck-wise very early on to what we're seeing here in the competition now. You want to make sure you're not giving yourself 90-10, 100-0 matchups. But that's enough out of us. Let's hear about these guys, SoCal and Eternity, as they will be our first best of 5 today. So two very different paths to success here for SoCal and Eternity. SoCal hasn't been out here since April 13th. Eric, Eternity, as you just saw, talking about taking down Denbeer, taking down Demas, and barely squeezing on through. Top 8 was the goal for SoCal, which, you know, he just has to make it through today to do that. How are you feeling about this matchup? It's very, very different for both of these guys, and Eternity's deck choice in his first day out, Eric, was really, I think, his biggest handicap.
Yeah, I think he took it a little too lightly. Like you said, he was played too obvious, too much comfort. And in this, you're going to get analyzed, especially now when you are fighting for that top 8. And even though SoCal said his goal is top 8, once you get to top 8, you want that top 4. And once you get there, you always want it. It's not top 8 initially, right? When you're in the top 70 players, and you're like, all right, I want that top 8. I'll be happy. But once you get to this point, you want to win it all. The only thing that scares me a little bit is he leaned a lot on that E-Giant. And if it's anything like yesterday, that E-Giant would have zero success against the decks that were played, and he has to be very careful. If he is going to bring an E-Giant deck, it is not very strong right now in the tournament meta.
One of the most fascinating things about Clash Royale is watching the meta shift as the seasons kind of go on and the Electro Giant kind of falling out of favor. Because, I mean, yesterday, I'll be honest, I was pushing ladder for an hour or two, and I feel like 80% of the decks I ran into were P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam. P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam is everywhere again because P.E.K.K.A., that big mama P.E.K.K.A., she's so good right now. And we've seen her combined with many things. P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam, I think, probably because it's been the most popular for so long. But I don't know, have you seen any P.E.K.K.A. Graveyard, P.E.K.K.A. Loon out there? I've seen a little bit of it. It just seems like she's a great response to a handful of cards in the meta, including the bowler that's starting to show up even more often.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Anaban type deck with the P.E.K.K.A. Loon Freeze. I have seen a little bit of the P.E.K.K.A. Graveyard, not too much, but that P.E.K.K.A. Loon Freeze is even better against something like an E-Giant because last minute, if you do want a P.E.K.K.A. Freeze, it takes care of absolutely everything in that push. You also have the NATO, you have the Ice Wizard, you have everything available to you, and that P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam is now with Fireball, which makes it more effective as well. It is everywhere, and I think it's a great choice to have as one of your 3 decks. It's very versatile and has very few bad matchups right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how you guys are joining us today, whether it's through Twitter or through in-game, but I'm not sure if you guys saw a man out there being talked about a lot in the space today by Esports Royale in general was Ruben, Team Queso's Ruben. And the reason that I bring up Ruben is because last month in the monthly qualifier and in the finals, we saw a lot of innovation from Ruben. And obviously he has a very strong team behind him with Team Queso, but that's one thing we haven't seen a ton of in Gamestars. Now, we have seen some of it. You know, last week we saw some great firecracker usage that we hadn't seen a lot of, but I want to see some innovation out here, Eric. We're always surprised to see it at the highest level because it's hard to game against those good of opponents. But here in Gamestars League, I think it'd be a great opportunity to maybe bust out an E-Giant deck with Prince, maybe bust out P.E.K.K.A. Graveyard.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is the few times we have seen adaptation, they've been very risky decks that haven't really worked out. So you have to be very careful. What Ruben does so well is I think he spends most of his time just testing everything out. Like he makes sure those new decks, the surprise decks, work perfectly, and he usually wins the games very easily. So I do want to see new things, but make sure they work. Don't just experiment to experiment.
So here we have Eternity actually is at the top of the screen, at least camera-wise, and SoCal at the bottom, I believe, here. Because Eternity is the great, the Golem guy at the top there, so a little bit of a mix-up there on our graphics, but Eternity bottom of your screen here, at least deck-wise, you can see there, Han the Eternal at the bottom there, rocking Bomber, Electro Giant, the card we were just talking about. Top of your screen, SoCal. He's got a Valkyrie, he's got some archers, and the Tesla. It's going to be very, very difficult to break through here as we start our first minute of gameplay.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, and more if he's going to play it in that way, in that sense. In single elixir on the bridge with the Tesla already up, that is not what you want to see. You're never going to have enough elixir for your lightning, and that Bomber and Prince get taken care of pretty easily, even though he didn't even have his Valk in cycle. So once that Valk is now in cycle every single time, and he knows what he's going up against. Right now he's not going to just cycle the Mega Minion and the Valk and not have anything for it. He knows exactly what he's playing against, and it's going to be very, very, very difficult for Eternity to get any damage at this point.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that Eternity is going to have to do here is kind of just play strong defense here through single elixir. And then in double elixir, one of the things you talked about a lot, Eric, over the last couple of weeks was just when you are playing Electro Giant, you got to play it from the back most of the time. And if you are going to play it at the bridge, you have to know the exact right moment to do that. You can't just be throwing him at the bridge hoping something good going to happen, because he's so slow, he's so easy to defend. And if your opponent is smart, they'll have a very large counter push. So here we go. Eternity setting up from back here with his Electro Giant. And there's that Valkyrie you were talking about.
Yeah, the only time you can really Electro Giant on the bridge is when you do hit that triple elixir and you have enough time to actually get back into your rotation and into the things you need. A very nice lightning out of him there that will take care of the bomber, and it'll bring back another Valkyrie to cycle. But this is good damage out of him. You only needed to get there for a couple of seconds for it to do so much damage. It is so powerful and very well played, and I like the push from the back a lot better than I like the original one.
Yeah, so-called overspends on defense. You can see kind of the frustration on his face there in the top right camera. You see Eternity reset with that Electro Giant in the back, which is definitely the correct decision. After the overspend and after the damage comes in, yeah, a little bit of a bummer with the bomber there. One thing I really did like, though, Eric, was on that last push, Eternity, he just played it very, very calm. And like you said, when he got that Electro Giant on the tower, that's all you need, right? It's like a mortar connection when you drop it down. If you get one shot on tower, great. You get two shots in, that's gold. You don't need anything else there, and that's why I like to see him reset. He's playing much more calm than he did in the last couple times we saw him.
Absolutely, and this all also stems from the fact that there was no reason for so-called to go in with the graveyard yet. You need to pick your moments very, very well when you're playing against E-Giant, because this is exactly what happens. You overspend even in the slightest, and that's all the advantage the E-Giant needs. Once you get that lightning down, it's going to take care of the Tesla, especially when you have a Tesla and not something like an Infernal Tower that can tank a lightning strike and then still be up for a little bit. The Tesla's gone right away. So I think he was a little bit over aggressive knowing he had a good matchup, and he flipped it on himself.
Yeah, we saw that a little bit yesterday too, throwing away good matchups because you have so many phenomenal responses. But these guys are very, very good. They're some of the best in the world. You know, we started with almost 100 players and we're down to 16. There's a reason why these 16 guys got here. And yeah, getting over aggressive early on because you have great responses is never the way you want to see a game go.
Yeah, now he's in panic mode. You see it. We've all been there. He's just tossing everything he can at this point on the bridge, seeing what can happen. But Eternity played that very smart. He realized, okay, you want to push? There's no problem. I'll let this E-Giant go. If I get no damage, that is not an issue for me. I already have over a 1,000 HP lead. I just have to defend this, block on the bridge, and I'll be good to go.
Exactly, and he had so many good splash cards there to deal with all that cleanup on the back end. So a tough start here for SoCal. Maybe Eternity's rougher path to victory has kept him a little more fresh here. You know, SoCal, like I said, it's been almost 2 months since we've seen him out in competition here in Gamestars. I assume he's probably been playing in the interim, Eric, but playing at the highest level, playing with competition on your mind, playing in this format, that's a little different.
It's always different when you're playing at ladder, when you're playing against friends, when you're practicing. Then when you get here, you're in the competition, you're being casted, you're being live streamed. Everything is a whole different mindset. It's not just the game. You know you're being watched, and all that affects you when you're not in your groove. And it might take a game or two for him to, you know, really get back into his top level, his top form of competition. But I'm sure he will, and maybe it was just first game jitters.
And let's not forget what happened to Eternity the first time that he came out. Yes, we talked about his struggles, Eric, but he also ran into a guy that you and I were praising quite a bit yesterday in Hugo. Hugo was the man that took Eternity down in his original group stage in Group G. And Hugo played phenomenally yesterday. So seeing Eternity come out and play very strong in his last couple appearances, you know, it's all about that partner. It's all about that that opponent you run into. There's a reason why at CRL we have a Swiss bracket. You know, that opponent win rate does matter.
Yeah, it sure does. And it's a little bit of what we saw yesterday when we saw the lower bracket at the beginning. We were very scared. Okay, you lost 3 times with the specific deck, but it ended up just being that Hugo played so well that he couldn't be beat. And then that one deck actually did win a bunch of times. So it's not, it does matter who you play against. You're 100% right. And you saw Eternity give the little smirk early on. And I was like, why is he smirking? What's going on? And he dropped the Elite Barbarian's Rage Heal Spirit on the bridge. Shame on you, my friend. Oh man.
Yeah, very, very aggressive opening push and an easy response there with the Mega Knight. We get the Goblin Giant Kite, and this Goblin Giant Sparky E-Barb's Rage deck has been a little bit more popular in Grand Challenges. I haven't seen it as much on Ladder, and we saw a little bit of Goblin Giant Sparky in Gamestars League over the last month or so, but not as much as you'd expect considering actually how successful it's been.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's always been a thing with the Sparky. As much as it does well, even in CRL back in the day, at one point I think it had an almost perfect win rate and you still would barely see it. I don't know what it is, just mentally you always you think about Sparky and you're like, do I really want to play this? Should I play this? Even though it's doing well, I don't know exactly why that happens, but it just has always been that way.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. It's a very surprising card that you think with how strong it is regularly in metas that it would be showing up just a little bit more. And now we see SoCal going all in. That high Electro Wizard actually going to do a very good job. Does not turn around and get on top of the miner, but does help clean up that Zappy and the Flying Machine. But all that said and done, SoCal up in Elixir, up in damage.
Yeah, he is up in Elixir and damage, but all he needs is one Sparky connection, and Eternity knows that. Now he's not going to get distracted by those goblins either because they're going to be on the other side. So as long as he can just take care of this Sparky, I expect to see a Rage come down at some point here. I'm not sure if he's going to split lane push with the Elite Barbarians. He decides not to. And there go the Zappies, and here comes the Sparky.
Oh, look at that. A beautiful heal spirit. Sparky threads the needle. SoCal very frustrated by that, as I would be as well. Now we get another Sparky coming down. Magic Archer going to get on top of that, but a high Ewa is going to set everything right in its place. And SoCal recognizing that this game is slipping through his fingers as these 10 seconds tick down. Eric, talk to me a little bit about what went wrong in game number 2. For me, in game number 1, he had the opportunity to set up a city, wait till double and triple, stack Teslas, and just get in a cheap graveyard with a bar barrel graveyard push opposite lane. What happened here in game number 2?
Well, there's 2 big mistakes that I saw, and it was that Goblin Hut that I recognized early on is not going to distract the Sparky, and that's exactly what happened. Once that Goblin Hut went down, the Sparky is not going to target those Spear Goblins, because as soon as that pops, yes, it does spawn 3 or 4 Spear Goblins, but they spawn 1 tile to the left of wherever it is placed, meaning that it would go on the other side and the Sparky would not get distracted, and that's why it hit directly onto tower. You need to recognize those things when you're playing the Goblin Hut and you're playing against the Sparky deck. The second big mistake was towards the end. You have a minor poison. You can still take that tower. Why are you minoring the Sparky? It is irrelevant at that point. You just need to take that tower first and then figure out how you're going to deal with the defense.
So you're saying that in that or at least in the first thing you were talking about, after the second Goblin, the second Goblin Hut that came down should have been working towards the stronger lane where the Sparky was to kind of break up its shot and distract it. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but I wasn't sure. Maybe he was trying to chip away the tower, create opposite lane pressure. But as you said, it was very easy decision-making there for Eternity to just ignore those goblins and kind of sell out on the right-hand side. He had a great heal spirit. And as you said, that Goblin Hut that didn't distract the Sparky was also offset to the left, and then Sparky threads the needle for a big time tower connection. Here we are, game number 3 coming your way, and SoCal, the dominant force weeks ago, almost 2 months ago, has had a lot of struggles today.
It's crazy how quick the competition went by. I can't believe it's been almost 2 months since he played. And he's going back to the same deck here. I hope he realizes that the chip damage is not really needed with those Spear Goblins this time around. If you need them for defense, they are a lot better than anything else. Just make sure you get those minor poisons down, and that is your main damage dealer onto tower. Use this hut as a defensive structure like it should be.
So we've been seeing very different looks here from Eternity so far, something I'm very happy to see.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if it's working out right now for him, but he's just getting into that cycle. He needs to get a good cycle going, and it will be a little bit tough because that's the spear goblins will, you know, bunch up against the. I'm assuming we're seeing a lava here, and the Mega Knight is tough to stop when you have Skarmy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does feel like this is a double dragon lava deck, and you see SoCal recognizing immediately with those zappies right behind that he's in a good place to kind of stack things up at the bridge. Now, doesn't have to worry about the Skarmy, like you said, because of the MK, so that means that the E-Barbs have to come down, so it's easy to pile things up there, and look at that great miner to come in to make those Skarmy, or to make that Skarmy populate the board.
And that's what you really want to see out of Eternity. Also, put that Skarmy down a little bit further back because he only has Barb Barrel. That's where you could get a lot of use out of it. He placed it very, very high up early on, and he gave too much Barb Barrel value, no value at all to the Skarmy. And this is a little bit of the issue he's going to have to deal with. Now these Spear Goblins are going to start piling up on the other side of the board, and he doesn't have the Baby Dragon in cycle because he had used it early on, and now it is forced out on the bridge. Flying Machine going to take it out. And it's just, I think it's an unfortunate overall matchup that he's making work. But okay, he got it down. I didn't think he was going to have the Elite Barbarians down in time.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was going to go for a straight up tower trade there. Poison, though, paying dividends on the defensive side there by SoCal, and he's back on offense with that Goblin Hut, able to take those hits from the Elite Barbarian, as his left-hand tower is the one that Eternity's going to be working towards. What needs to change here on this push, Eric?
He needs to start MK on the bridge, in my opinion. You should be MK Zappies on the bridge, and that is over. That is game over. The last card that he used was the Elite Barbarians. You know they weren't in cycle. Now he has enough time to cycle everything, get enough tower damage, and there's the Elite Barbarians back at it. We saw this very early on. I don't know if you remember in Gamestars, where a lot of the players were very skeptical and did not want to use their Mega Knight on the bridge early on, and it ended up costing them. And here's the Infernal Dragon connecting for quite a lot of damage.
Yeah, that is a lot. Does demand a response, or it would have taken that tower down below its sister tower there at 1196. So Zappies come in, which is not good for SoCal. As you said last time around, Eric, those were right up at the bridge to help protect that Mega Knight from the Inferno Dragon. So now having to maybe reset his cycle or reset his approach is SoCal. At the top of the playing for his, well, his winner's bracket life. He's got one more life left if he does drop this set.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to drop this early on, and you don't want to do it in a 3-0 fashion either. That hurts a lot more than just going down 3-2. You want to gain some confidence, so this is a very, very big match for him, even if he does end up losing the set. But he's struggling a lot in a matchup that you wouldn't really think would struggle right now. You have everything you need to make sure that lava doesn't get there, and you have pretty decent pushes. I would just like to see him be a little bit more aggressive on them.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Magic Archer, you've got the Poison, you've got the Barb Barrel, you've got a lot of things to clean up your opponent's responses, but it just seems like he's not able to create the pressure he likes. And look at that left-hand side, Magic Archer is still connected there. Magic Archer's still in, Miner on the tower, Poison ticks, and 82 HP remains. SoCal fighting for his life. What happened in those final moments?
He got aggressive. That's it. That's all you got to do. He went Zappies, Magic Archer, Miner, Poison, everything on the bridge. Just go. He doesn't have anything. The other mistake was on Eternity's end. I pointed out very early on. You cannot Skarmy on the bridge. He has Barb Barrel. Skarmy anywhere except the bridge, my friend. You can distract the Magic Archer by putting it in the middle. It is better off than getting 1 or 2 hits from a Skelly onto a Zappy. Just make sure it cannot get Barb Barreled, and he made that mistake 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, that's a really, really tough one there. And you saw earlier, or not even earlier, just I'd say throughout the 4 minutes and 50 seconds of that game, it felt like Eternity's Fireball was just always where it needed to be. But if you look at the other side of the board, 6 Flying Machines, 8 sets of Zappies, 7 Magic Archers. It was really shocking how it felt like the under-aggression from SoCal made it so that Eternity didn't really have to defend that adequately. And then as you saw, he turned up the heat. Fireball started going, you know, to different situations, maybe not the correct place to go to. And then you saw high Skarmies, which is a mistake that he made early on. And that's what happens when you start to hit that panic button.
Yeah, and it's all about that pressure. And here he has to realize that again. Barb Barrel is in hand for SoCal. Make sure the Skarmies go further back, and he should always have a good response for this Ghost with that Skarmy. That is a great card. The Ghost gets distracted way too much by it, but look at the other side. Be careful with your Skarmy, my friend. That Mother Witch loves to hit all those little skellies.
Yeah, Skarmy and the Lava Pups here are going to be a feast for that Mother Witch. It's going to be all about if SoCal can get her protected and get her on top of those squishy units. And we see Inferno Dragons crossing the board, should grab each other's attention here.
I think it was just the tile enough to make sure that they didn't lock onto each other, and I'm not sure in whose favor that actually played. It seems like it worked out better for SoCal at the end, but overall, just it's nice start to the match for both of them.
Yeah, really interesting trade there. You see that SoCal's towers are both at 2216. 2094 in the bottom left-hand side is the weakest of the four, but pretty okay if you consider that we've got one beat down deck against, Ram Rider been more and more popular. We saw a good amount of it yesterday to some varied success, and then of course I've been seeing a lot of it on those Grand Challenge boards, and this deck specifically has kind of been that iteration. P.E.K.K.A, Ram Rider, Mother Witch, along with the Electro Wizard and the Inferno.
And I'm a little bit nervous for him here dropping that Inferno. He's gonna have to either lava in front of it or something, because that Ewiz is gonna come down. You know it's there. And here's the high Skarmy, and he got very lucky that he did not Barb Barrel and then Ewiz, because if he did that would have been game over for him. He needs to be careful, man. Really with that high Skarmy.
And we'll see if SoCal clocked that just the same way that you did. Maybe he'll look for it in the next exchange. Especially with the E-Barbs out of cycle, Skarmy seems to be a more and more appetizing response. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he used Barb Barrel there, so now he does have that free Skarmy up top to defend, which is very good for him. I'm not sure if SoCal will just go a full defensive cycle. He decides not to, and a Skarmy should come down. Decides to go minor Skarmy. Hello.
Oh, and there's the poison. Yeah. I mean, he's setting himself up for kind of failure there by trying to get a little trickier, maybe letting the opponent's mind games get to him. So a very rough defense there on the left-hand side, and SoCal looking like he could even this set up, Eric.
Yeah, this could go all the way back in his favor. I'm not sure what his last deck is, but at this point, it's looking like he's taking control of this set, and he's definitely playing the right way. It seems like Eternity's a little bit in his head with this lava deck, not as comfortable as he was with his other ones.
It really did feel like he was in his own head, especially with that last defense that came down, holding on the Skarmy, allowing the poison to come in, dropping the Skarmy late. All of that was just because, maybe he was thinking a lot about what you and I had been talking about, and the way he was using that Skarmy. Mine are going to go in, and Eternity fighting back hard here.
Yeah, and the reason why he got that much damage is there was 5 elixir, and he decided to Barb Barrel and then Mother Witch instead of just holding on 2 more seconds and getting that P.E.K.K.A down and making sure that none of those elite barbarians hit. And watch out, because this is not over. Oh, okay, there it is. I thought the Ghost was gonna go down earlier. Yeah.
Ghost almost goes down. E-Barbs almost connect. Baby Dragon belching on the tower. Barb Barrel comes in for a last second save there, and we are all even going into game number 5. What an interesting turnaround set this has been, and what a rough time Eternity has been having with his Lava Hound.
I think Eternity, at this point, if I'm your coach, I'm telling you, go Abdullah style, man. Forget about the defense, because it's costing you right now. Just go all in on offense and see what happens. See if SoCal is a little bit flustered by it. We've seen so many opponents go down to Abdullah's playstyle that at this point, you might as well just try it, because he's not really comfortable defending with this deck, and it's pretty obvious.
Now, I believe SoCal's remaining deck is the first deck we saw. Is that correct? The Valkyrie, Tesla, Archers.
Yeah.
So that deck, how does that fare against the Lava Hound deck? If SoCal plays it correctly, should he build a city, stack Archers, and not have an issue? Or is he going to have a hard time getting overwhelmed, do you think?
I think it's all going to come down to so-called picking the right moment for the graveyard. If you can pick the right moment for it and get enough damage and then just go full defense the rest of the game, you can win this. It is not easy, but the one advantage that he does have is that this is being played without Loon, and it does not have the skeleton dragons either. He has the baby dragon, which is a lot worse against Tesla than if you can just spam those skelly dragons behind the baby dragon and get a lot of damage very quickly. So there are some advantages to so-called going up against this specific lava deck.
So two different approaches here from our former world champion head coach. Eternity taking a note from your book, Eric, and he does exactly what you said. He goes Abdullah style, goes aggressive early on, and so-called, he said, needs to wait and pick and choose and find his correct moment. Let's see how that fares right now as that Inferno Dragon with some pups causing some trouble early on.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see a zap there really early onto those archers to get the miner, you know, done and dealt with. And then those lava pups would have connected onto the tower instead of the Valk, because the exchange would have been a lot quicker. So the damage, we would probably see the tower at 1,000. Be a little bit more aggressive. You have the time, and the Tesla was out of cycle. And that's it. But Eternity really, I like what he did early on. Just go all in. You know what you're playing against, and you know that the pressure is not going to be on right away, because the only thing that he has for your Skarmy is to actually poison that. I'm pretty sure this deck has poison. I think it's graveyard poison, the last two cards, and it would just be way too expensive of a push for him to actually be able to defend. So he doesn't really risk anything by going all in.
Yeah, and a really tough start there defensively for so-called when you talk about that Inferno Dragon and the lava pups, and at the very end there we saw the overspend from the archers coming down, which is why he was down 3 elixir coming into this exchange, which is making it very difficult. Here he is. He's technically up a little elixir because you talk about what's on the board, but not the situation you want to be in. And now setting up a mega minion. Maybe he tries to bait something out here, or he goes in for the graveyard. He does get the Skarmy.
Yeah, he baited out the Skarmy. Yeah, he baited out the Skarmy. Not bad from him at all. I do like the bait, but I don't really love this follow-up. That is going to get taken care of pretty quickly, and I should see Elite Barbarians go down, or guess not. He went Fireball instead. I would have liked to see Elite Barbarians, just because it would have, Elite Barbarian Zap would have created a nice counter push and forced out so much defense, seeing as the Valk is out of cycle now.
Exactly, and that would have left this Lava Hound to get a little bit of damage probably on that right-hand tower and maybe a little bit of minor chip. Instead, Eternity kind of goes back to what he's been doing, which is just a Lava Hound push, Inferno Dragon or Baby behind with a late set of E-Barbs. It's been working out okay, but it does seem like so-called started to figure that out.
Yeah, and here just a naked graveyard that he throws down, and he forces out not only an Inferno Dragon, but also a Baby Dragon. So he's falling for every bait that so-called is throwing out there, and I really like the adjustment out of so-called. How am I going to win this game? This is the way that I got to do it, and he's definitely bringing himself back into a position where he can win.
Yeah, and here we go. E-Barbs split in the back, the high miner to turn that Valkyrie around. Now no tank, but now we get that set in, and a very healthy Valkyrie getting tanked for by the skeletons. That Valkyrie might get on tower, Eric. It does not. E-Barb squeezes around just in time.
Yeah, and with that, he's probably going to end up taking the game with the miner, and he needs to cycle back to that fireball if he can. No response for the miner. He knows it. So-called is kind of done and dusted, but he got away with one there, in my opinion. That Valk, I could have sworn was going to get on tower.
Yeah, that was so close, and there you go. The Skarmy comes down just for good measure. Fireball goes in, and we go the distance in our first set of the day. Almost gets the reverse sweep, is so-called. Now he has to sit back, reset, and think about his opponent down the line. This is double elimination here in Gamestars League, especially as we get into the finals. So he will have one more chance if you are a fan of that man. But Eternity able to make it work. A little bit of struggling there in the middle of the set, Eric, but he pulls it out at the end.
Yeah, and moving forward, I want to see how he does with that lava deck, because man, we've seen some of the better lava players play like Abdullah in this tournament, and there was a noticeable difference. So congrats to Eternity, but when he plays someone like possibly One Hive Hunter, who's a little bit of the more experienced player and possibly going to go more comfort, I need him to show that he can play this lava at the same level as his other two decks, because the other two decks he played so well.
What's crazy about this set too, Eric, is if you think back to how this started and some of the misplays that SoCal had in game 1 and game 2. You know, game 2 we're looking at right now, we're talking about that Goblin Hut specifically. I mean, that was still a really nice zap that came in from Eternity to make sure those Goblins did not distract his Sparky. But it felt like the ball drop in game number 1 was really what hurt SoCal in this set. He had a very good matchup. He played it hyper aggressive, and it felt like that Graveyard versus the Electro Giant deck was kind of the opening that he didn't want to give to Eternity.
Yeah, and I think that hyper aggression was what hindered him in the second match as well. He went too slow, was overly careful, and that tends to happen, right? You lost because you were too aggressive. You go into the next match and you're thinking to yourself, okay, don't be too aggressive, I got to be careful here, and then you play too slow, and it's all that part of those mind games. But he was able to curl back into this and at least gain some confidence in himself, I'd hope so, moving forward in this bracket. And he has to look at yesterday's, right? We saw someone go down in the same way that he just went down. Even worse, I think. He played it a lot closer here, SoCal, and then he ended up qualifying. So just stick in there and match by match.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely not over till it's over. You have 2 losses. You got to kind of go back, reset, think about some of the mistakes that you made. The thing is that those mistakes that he made were pretty glaring mistakes, Eric, and he still only lost by like 100 HP a couple times, right? This set was still insanely close for, you know, Eternity played pretty clean throughout, other than with this Lava Hound deck. And the fact that SoCal was that close with the mistakes that he made is, I think, what he needs to hold on to. On the other side of it, though, Eternity played much, much better than we saw out of him earlier on in this competition.
Yeah, he seems a lot more comfortable than he did the first time around where we saw him play E-Giant. He definitely did not play it the right way. He was playing it somewhat like a Golem deck, and now it seemed very, very comfortable for him once he got into that cycle that he wanted to. I really like what I saw out of him with the Sparky play as well. And yeah, Eternity looking a lot better than we saw early on and playing more to the expectations that we did have for him.
You just saw there the play out of the day yesterday, which is what these guys would like to repeat, of course, ending up in those final 2 spots. Eternity on a good track so far, 5 games in the books, and we're only 1 set down. One Hive, Hunter, and Roofy are up next. And you know, SoCal had a very successful opening to this tournament. Eternity and One Hive are 2 names that you and I had kind of heard coming into the space a good amount. I do feel like Roofy is a bit of an underdog, but let's hear from him, Roofy himself, and from One Hive as we hop into this next set. So a true underdog story, a Cinderella story, if you will, here from Roofy, going up against a man that was in the CRL qualifiers last month, One Hive Hunter. Looking back at those replays, Eric, it looked like Roofy was two different people. It looked like he turned around about halfway through, I think maybe his set with Predator, and it was a man possessed from there on out, where it looked like he could not win a game to save his life early on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happens. It's sometimes that little switch in your head from a player where you're like, okay, come on, I know how to play better than this. Let's get going. And I hope we see that same Roofy here. And on the other end, replay after replay after highlight came with the E-Giant for One Hive Hunter. Will he bring it out again, and will Roofy be prepared for it? Is he bringing counters to it? This first one seems to be a P.E.K.K.A deck, so it is not with the Inferno Dragon. It might go more into the Mega Knight version. Once you see Inferno Dragon, it usually is in P.E.K.K.A.
I do like that, you know, we call out the thought of One Hive Hunter playing that Electro Giant deck over and over and over. I doubt that we'll see that today, but it was nothing but success for him when you look back at those replays. I think the only game that really looked like he lost was by about 12 HP for a full set sweep over Beneficius, and you know, that's kind of what we expected to see out of One Hive Hunter, so we'll see if expectations follow through today. Roofy at the bottom of your screen, One Hive at the top. We are in Group B today, fighting for those international finals, getting closer to that $30,000, and Roofy with a big swing early on.
Yeah, he's got to be very happy with that start. It didn't cost him much, and on top of everything, he got a lot of damage. That flying machine also goes down. So overall, a really nice start for Roofy, and I like what we're seeing. It's not what I expected to see out of One Hive Hunter this early on.
Yeah, I'm shocked that flying machine actually went down. Great recognition there by Roofy. He's got a massive lead. Wall breakers can go in that right-hand side.
Defense.
Nothing there. No, sir, not at all. They're going to both connect. And now Roofy is in a great spot to kind of sit back, play defense for a little bit, see what minor chip damage he can get to or get through as we tick in to double elixir.
Yeah, the only thing he has to be very careful of is those high zappies onto an Inferno Dragon, because he doesn't have a fireball, he doesn't have poison, he doesn't have anything to take care of it. So if he tries to Inferno Dragon Mega Knight up top, he needs to be very careful, knowing that zappies are in hand for Hunter, for One Hive Hunter, and they could cause a lot of problems for him.
And there's that flying machine up high, maybe a Mega Knight behind. There it is to take that Mother Witch off the board. A nice reset of the zap there by Roofy, and now that Inferno Dragon still alive on top of the flying machine. And One Hive Hunter wondering who this man is that he's playing at the moment.
Yeah, and we were wondering which Roofy we were gonna get, and he's going for the Roofy that is unstoppable, the one that came out with everything, because this match seems like he's playing against me right now. He's controlling the match so well. I'm so impressed, and it's not that One Hive is playing bad, it's how well Roofy is playing.
Yeah, and you look at, I mean, look at the left side of your board. The numbers speak for themselves. One Hive Hunter lost one game in both of his sets for a clear path to where we are right now. Roofy, this is his 24th game out, Eric. 24 games to 7. That's 3 times the amount. It appears that the practice is paying off.
Yeah, I mean, look, experience is on his side clearly when you see those numbers. There is no way he's nervous about anything at this point. He's been in the trenches, he's been at the top of his game, he's been everywhere, and I think he just feels at home at this point. This is his format, he's practiced it more than anyone else, and One Hive is now gonna have to play Roofy's game.
I'm trying to remember if when we were calling Roofy's matches, we were saying, you know what, at this point, what else do you have to lose? When you lose that badly early on, as long as you can keep your morale up enough to continue to sign into the game and play those best of fives, you've already got my respect. But the fact that Roofy turned it completely around and now we're seeing what we're seeing out of him today, I feel like this is just a guy that has nothing left to lose. He's already seen the worst of what can happen in his performance at Gamestars League, and he's still here, he's still kicking, and he took the second game off of One Hive Hunter.
Yeah, and I mean, you played sports, I played sports, and if there's something that I learned along the way, not only in esports but in regular sports, is the scariest team or person to play is that has nothing to lose, and that is Roofy right now.
That is a very good point you make, and here we go. Roofy with the cannon cart setting up in the back, gonna meet that goblin cage. Baby Dragon behind, and it looks like we could be going to Electro Giant here.
Wow, Roofy bringing something that I don't think anyone expected, and this is one of those pushes that you're just like, okay, now what do I do? He just he just minored. He has a horde down. The cannon is gonna take care of this, and this is looking nice for him. Mortar is a great card to, you know, really get that E-Giant distracted. The only thing that I'm a little bit scared of here is that all his troops died to the E-Giant radius, so he needs to be very careful on a big push.
He's gonna have to make sure to cycle those cannon carts early on to try and get 2 down. The good thing about that cannon cart is, even though it is slow, it can help you keep those Electro Giants where you need them. He's got a decent cycle here, a little bit more expensive with the cannon cart and that minion horde, so not gonna be as easy to stack those mortars. And we'll see if he has, yeah, there we go. Cannon cart comes down again here. Nice nade to the opposite lane. We see One Hive not happy about that.
Yeah, he activated King Tower by mistake. I'm assuming he was a little bit too quick on the NATO. He wanted to make it happen too soon, and he clipped the King Tower and activated it. But it doesn't really matter in my opinion. If you get that E-Giant to get close enough to the tower, it means that it is locked onto your opponent's tower, and you know what, 1 or 2 hits will be enough when you're playing against a mortar deck.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing why One Hive is as good as he is as a player, is he recognizes how detrimental to success those mistakes can be. And fortunately for him, he's not playing log bait, he's not playing minor chip, he's just going with that big electric giant here as he sets up for another set of defense. Spear Goblin's going to go down to a belch as this cannon cart locks in, and that's a nice bit of value out of that Baby Dragon, Eric.
Yeah, and I think this is the one mortar deck you don't want to play when you're going up against E-Giant. And once he gets a NATO onto all your troops on top of the E-Giant, there's nothing you can do. Once this cannon cart goes down, which it actually did not go down, and that's very good for him, you know that the E-Giant is now going to get distracted on top of that as well. And this is the issue. Minion Horde gets taken down for free, basically, and Elixir is just going to keep on piling on for Hunter.
Yeah, that Minion Horde is going to be a really, really hard card to continue to thread the needle. Roofy's done a good job a couple times with dropping it as the miner populates the board, so that whatever unit would take those minions out is usually distracted, but obviously the miner not super tanky, and that Baby Dragon is causing a lot of trouble for Roofy in regards to the Goblin Gang, the Spear Goblins, and of course, the Minion Horde.
Yeah, and this is I like what he did there with the placement of the cannon cart, but he needs to get that those Spear Goblins tanked for a lot more often. Maybe play them behind the cannon cart or something. They're going down to the Baby Dragon every single time without any defense or value coming out of them, and he needs to be a little more careful on the way he plays those.
So here we go, Miner, Log, Goblin Gang gonna get nice cleanup there with the Bar Barrel and a counter push coming in. Probably no E-Giant here out of One Hive. There it is in the back. That is a much more calculated play and makes sense for the man that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out how he's gonna stop this now, because this is gonna be it. This is a triple elixir push coming out of an E-Giant. He does miner for some chip, but that's not the main concern. The concern isn't how are you gonna get damage, it's how you're gonna avoid the damage. And he does have another mortar here for him to come out with, but another E-Giant is scarier than another mortar.
And there's that NATO you talked about. Very healthy E-Giant still on the board. Log gonna come in.
Another one.
I think he is back to another mortar. He can play up high, and that lightning comes in. That mortar will get a shot. There's the Ice Wizard to catch, and a miner goes into that left-hand side. This is ice skating uphill, if you will, for Roofy at this moment. Nice fireball there, but lightning is going to be the one to take the cake. Yeah, he just got to go. He's got to go hard.
He shouldn't be defending anything. He catches his miner, and I'm not sure he has enough. 606.
Oh my god!
Oh my god, 1 HP.
The 1 HP game, and Roofy just needed to be a little more aggressive there at the end. Get the miner to the back, get the goblins up high, just get that cycle going. He kind of hit panic and just froze for about 3 seconds, right?
Yeah, that's the 3 seconds that maybe would have been another log that could have been cycled, or just the miner placement was a little bit off for me, in my opinion. The Dark Prince was already there, and when you log it, it's going to push it back towards the miner. Maybe go for a miner all the way in the back, see what you can do. Even though he lost, Rufy did very, very well in a matchup that I thought he was going to end up losing, because that mortar deck is very squishy.
Yeah, when it came to triple elixir, Rufy was able to get that cycle around very, very rapidly. 11 sets of spear goblins came down, and I feel like 5 of them died instantly to those baby dragons. That could be a bit of an over-exaggeration, but I feel like the spear goblin value was something that you and I highlighted a good amount yesterday, and just not getting a lot of it in that specific matchup was Rufy. But you know what? 1 HP is all that separated him and One Hive in a very odd mortar deck. You know, it's a mortar deck we haven't seen in a very long time, but the minion horde is becoming a little bit more popular with less arrows and of course less poison.
Yeah, and the only bad thing about that type of mortar deck is that it's very, very strong when it comes in as a surprise deck, right? When you don't expect the minion horde, when you don't expect everything. Now that you lost with it, he knows exactly what you have, and it will get a little bit tougher unless you have a really good matchup with it.
That is a really tough 1 HP loss in game number 2 as One Hive splits Zappies in the back as the first minute of gameplay regulation, if you will, ticks away. This is our
that 1 HP.
5.
That 1 HP follows me everywhere, man. Just leave me alone.
Rufy's gonna blame it on you after this.
Yeah, I mean, those are the matches, man. And it happened to me last night on ladder at 3 in the morning. I was playing a match. I was like, yeah, I'll go till I lose, and I lost a 1 HP match, and I was like, all right, I'm going to sleep. That's the end of it for me.
It's bedtime.
Yeah. But he's starting off well, though. No?
Yeah, it's a nice start here. He's got good minor chip damage. Slow start for both of these guys, but obviously it's going to favor Rufy with the quick cycle, the chip there, the minor, those spear goblins, and we'll see exactly what One Hive wants to do here as we move forward into double elixir. That Mother Witch going to be something that Rufy looks out for. One interesting thing about this specific iteration of Mortar, and One Hive not happy about that connection, is...
I don't know about you, but I'm surprised he didn't defend that Mortar. With something like a goblin gang, with anything, especially since it was locked onto tower already, he kind of just let it go.
Yeah, I think he was so surprised that it even connected there, and now those spear goblins gonna have a
cannon
tank
cart's
here in that cannon cart, and One Hive Hunter, he's self-destructing in this moment.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with One Hive Hunter right now. You see it in his facial expressions. He's way too in his head. He's taking everything a little bit too harsh. You know you're a better player than this. Reset mentally, shake it off, shake off the tilt, and get back into your groove. Don't let this affect you too much, because you can still come back in this set.
Yeah, this is a huge moment for Rufy when you talk about the struggles that he had early on in this competition. Eric, this is a game 3 going in favor of him, and just off of some very, very uncharacteristic misplays from One Hive. And I think it all started with that King Tower activation with the NATO that really wasn't that bad, but you can see how tilted or how much it bothered One Hive in that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, good for Rufy at this point. I really, if you told me that he was going to be up 2-1 in this set and really only losing by 1 HP against One Hive, who was so strong early on, I probably would have told you I don't think so. But he's playing so well.
That's a sweep, right? If it wasn't 1 HP, that would have been a sweep. Just a quick 3 up, 3 down for Rufy, but 1 HP remains, and that's why One Hive Hunter is still alive. And you know, Rufy gets a win with that Mortar Minion Horde deck. He starts off very, very strong in game number 1 with, you know, something that you kind of expect out of him. So here we go into game number 4. Very curious to see what both these guys are going to come out to play with. And One Hive Hunter, this is where he needs a coach, man. This is where he needs a guy like you talking into his ear, letting him know that it's okay. We're okay.
Yeah, and the only thing that worries me here a little bit, Andrew, is I don't want to get excited for Rufy just yet, because if there's been a downfall for inexperienced players, it's been the 3rd deck choice. So I need to see what he's playing first before I get excited. I hope it's just a normal deck. The surprise deck was already there with the Mortar. You don't need 2 surprises.
So One Hive gets that Goblin page down as a Barb Barrel goes out for Rufy here.
And pretty simple right now. Baby Dragon looking good so far. No random cards just yet in this 3rd deck for Rufy. Keeping it simple. Let's see.
And maybe Roofy gonna go to Electro Giant.
If it is Electro Giant, he has a great matchup in the fact that Inferno Dragon does absolutely nothing against it. He can just eat-giant it right away. But with that, that's going to be a little bit tough, and this is very, very good for him actually. If he has a NATO here, NATO it back, don't risk the King Tower activation. He is going to risk it. Okay, he got it down. I just didn't want to risk it in the sense that if that dragon did zap it midway through, it wouldn't have activated, and it was very, very risky, but it worked out well.
Yeah, Barbarian gonna get 2 swings there. Not bad for Roofy at all. It's a pretty good exchange. This Mega Minion he can neglect, so only down 1 elixir and down a little bit of damage. He did get that tricky card in there with the Electro Dragon, one of my favorite cards in the game, but definitely underutilized in the current meta. And One Hive going to the skies.
Yeah, One Hive going with the Pompeo deck, it seems like, and I hope he can play it as well as Pompeo, because if he can, he can win any matchup. But having Inferno Dragon against Electro Dragon is not the greatest of things. I'm sure he wasn't too happy when he saw that, and I want to see how he's going to be able to defend a full push out of Roofy. What I do like out of Roofy now is that he realized, okay, I'm going up against Loon. I need to be a little bit more careful in my interactions. I cannot go as aggressive as I was just going. Let me defend, and then I'll pick my moment. He's playing very well.
I agree. I think that's exactly what Roofy should have been doing in single elixir, and he finds himself in a good spot here as we take into double. And it seemed like it just got worse and worse for One Hive as more and more cards got played. We saw the Baby Dragon, then the Ice Wiz, then the Fireball, then the Electro Dragon, then the NATO, then the Cage, and you were just like, how on earth is One Hive ever going to get a balloon on tower? And we'll see if Roofy ever allows him to.
Yeah, and on top of that, he doesn't have all these great answers for an RG. This deck, yes, it does have Cage, but it seems like at one point he's going to get overwhelmed, especially if he can keep cycling an RG on the back. That RG hits even with all that defense coming through, and now another one is cycled in, and I'm sure we'll see an Electro Dragon. No Electro. Wow, Roofy's playing so smart.
I love that. Yeah, you saw the miner go in behind there from One Hive, expecting Roofy to do what he had been doing. Roofy, though, playing very calm, as he said just a moment ago, recognizing what he's playing against and recognizing how quickly things can go bad against this type of balloon deck. Never getting over aggressive, and 400 plus HP in the lead right now is Roofy. I'm shocked, but I'm having a good time.
I can't believe it. And the recognition of, okay, if I Electro Dragon here, he's most likely going to expect that, was so unexpected for me out of Roofy. I did not expect him to predict, and he's playing like he deserves to move on, and that's what I love to see. You know, there are matches where you say, yeah, he won, but did he really play better, or was it just matchups? At this point, I think Roofy is the better player in this set.
Yeah, he really is playing so well right now, but One Hive will not go quietly into the night as he's trying to make a run for this. Miner in to support that Inferno Dragon, NATO to help defend. Miner gets a few shots right hand side. We see that Mega Minion working, and now we get that Royal Giant down. This is a race. Yeah,
I mean, he always has NATO in cycle, which is fine for him, and this will get a couple hits. He just needs to NATO this to the King Tower. I would have liked to see it go to King Tower. He was already there. You would have avoided the death damage, and now you're forced into another Loon. He has Zap. You need to Fireball this back. If that death damage gets in, you could lose.
Yep, and there you see the Fireball's in. The Zap is in. NATO comes back to pull that all the way back, but that Miner living on the tower, and that Brawler connects. 129, Baby Dragon is there. 82, One Hive just needs to get a spell down. Roofy trying to get any splash damage in, and we're going to game number 5.
And that's exactly the reason I said take that over to your King Tower. Never give up free death damage. That was not the right play, and one mistake in the whole match, and he lost it. Roofy played perfect throughout almost 4 straight minutes, and against the Loon decks, you got to play perfect the whole way through.
You really do. One good Loon assault comes in and takes that tower, takes the game from Roofy. And now we're going to game number 5 once again. 1 HP and 82 HP are the 2 games that One Hive has survived as we go to game number 5. And for Roofy, with this Royal Giant double dragon deck,
how
is he going to break through when you see those moments at the very end. He only gets 3 Royal Giants down. It's basically a perfect game throughout, and then he just cannot get damage in at the end.
This RG deck is great defensively when you look at the cards, but you can already tell by looking at the deck it's going to struggle offensive. You have no DPS behind that RG. You have nothing to really take care of those buildings. So Roofy's going to have to play perfect defense and live off of 2 to 3 RG hits and maybe win off damage, not even take a full tower.
Game number 5 here in Group B. One player is going to move on play against Eternity, and the other will go on to play against SoCal in our elimination bracket. 2 players from Group B will work their way on to the international finals this weekend. Best of 7s on Saturday and Sunday. $30,000 up for grabs.
That is a lot of money, man, and I'm still available to coach if you want to give me a percentage. No, but that is a lot when you think about it, and I love to see a competition like this come out and really give a chance to the best players that qualified. All these players, none of them, whether you know them or not, Hugo, One Hive, Eternity, they were not straight invites. They all had to qualify, so everyone here really earned their place.
Yeah, and there's a handful of names out there, big names that did not qualify or maybe stepped out of the tournament, and that was a very tall order to even make it into this point of Gamestars League. And now Roofy is taking a lot of damage on that right-hand side. Eric calling GG already, and Roofy knows that is basically it. That is game over right there, and he's going to have to reset and recollect himself for our elimination bracket. What a crazy back and forth set, as you can see. Blue, red, and now most likely going to go in favor of One Hive Hunter.
Yeah, if he can get Zappies down here, there they are. That should be enough for this RG. And the problem with it isn't that the push wasn't the right push. It was great push, you got a lot of damage, but it is such a slow RG deck that you cannot cycle back quick enough to actually take tower and defend at the same time. It's just way too tough, and if Hunter plays this not perfect, he just needs to play this decent and he'll win this game.
Yeah, and what a frustrating loss there for Roofy. Talk about 1 HP in game number 2, 82 HP in game number 4, but One Hive Hunter's experience and steady hand pay off.
Yeah, and I think even though the 1 HP game seems like it would hurt more, I think that Loon matchup is gonna hurt a lot more for him. He knows he could have won that. He had everything to defend against Loon. He had Cage, NATO, Electro Dragon, Baby Dragon, Ice Wizard, and it was just a little bit of a mistake, a little bit of a slip that cost him the whole set.
And to give credit where credit's due, One Hive Hunter recognizing that mistake and making Roofy pay for it. And what a heartbreaker here. It looked like Roofy was going to go 3-0 early on, but that second game, that 1 HP game, extends One Hive's life. He takes it in game number 4, and there it is in game number 5. A very handed victory, maybe more of what we were expecting in the beginning of this set. Wow, Eric, what a crazy back and forth there.
Yeah, that set was, we saw a little bit of everything, and if I'm Roofy, man, it hurts, but you gotta move on. You gotta go past. And as opposed to yesterday's lower bracket where I was a little bit skeptical of both players, I think both players right now in the lower bracket could still beat anyone in this bracket. They both played very well. They both had nice comebacks in their sets, good matches. So this whole bracket in general has been so strong.
Now that all the fun is kind of done here in Group B, Eric, it's time to get down into business. The first 2 sets kind of just lay a path for what the rest of the day is going to look like. Now in our 3rd match of the day, we will see SoCal going up against Roofy. One of them will be eliminated from the competition. The other one will go on to face the loser of Eternity One Hive Hunter. Of course, the winner of that Eternity One Hive Hunter set will be the champion of Group B and will go on to our finals this weekend. So we've got money to give away, we've got 1st and 2nd place to give away, and we've got people to eliminate. And you can see you and I, we thought it was all wrapped up. We thought it was ready to go, and somehow One Hive survives with 1 HP in game 2, and this is that bounce back in game number 3.
Yeah, One Hive really, I'm sure he knows he got away with this set here, and he needs to be a lot better if he's going to beat Eternity moving forward, which I'm sure we will see a better version of One Hive Hunter now that he got out of this set. You should be able to reset mentally, especially after you win it. If he would have lost, I would have been a little bit worried for him, but moving forward with the experience that he has, I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, and that was a big part of what felt like was the deciding factor in this set, Eric, was that experience. He was able to kind of hold on to hope that he's like, I know I'm better than how I'm playing. I just need to reset. And there it is. 82 HP comes in and the fireball comes down. What's crazy is that that fireball doesn't come in and it's another 1 HP game that Roofy actually won. Roofy had 82, One Hive had 81, but that fireball sets that off just a little bit. There's game number 5. That first Royal Hogs push was a brutal one.
Yeah, he knew what he was going up against. He knew that no defense was in cycle, no elixir ready, and he just straight hogged into the tower. Took tower so early on that when you have that good of a defensive deck with the Mega Knight, with the Zappies and the Flying Machine, he knew he could just sit back and relax at that point.
So one deck struggles here once again. Roofy not able to pick up a win with that Royal Giant deck, even though that doesn't quite paint the picture that we saw, considering how that fourth game went on the other side of it. One Hive Hunter, perfect with 2, and then a little bit of struggles with that top Mega Knight Royal Hogs deck, but ends up being able to pull it off pretty easily there in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the deck that he struggled with, it's not as bad as other decks that we've seen players struggle with. It is just a little bit too defensive in my opinion, but it is a deck that can win you a game. I'm not too worried. When I look at it and I see the decks of the other players, you know it could win one of those matchups. It's not one of those unwinnable ones. So he just needs to maybe start off with that deck and get it out of the way, because he looked so good with the other ones.
So as I was just kind of talking through, SoCal and Roofy will be the next match of the day. One of them will be eliminated. One of them will go on to play against either Eternity or One Hive Hunter, whoever is not successful in our 4th set of the day. And of course, whoever wins that, as you can see, the winner's match will go on to get first place here in Group B, join the other 2 from yesterday in waiting for this weekend's competition. B07s on Saturday, B07s on Sunday, and over $30,000 to give away still here in Gamestars League. Now we know what we're going to get here in our 3rd set, Eric. We know it's going to be SoCal versus Roofy. What are your thoughts here coming into this set?
I'm going to predict that a player from Poland is going to move on from this one. Yesterday we had the Turkish battle. Today we have the Polish battle. At least one of them has a chance at qualifying into the next round, no matter what. But if I'm being honest, I like what I saw a lot out of Roofy in those first 2 games. If he can get that 3rd deck to play the same way as the first 2, I think he'll take this. I didn't expect to be saying this when I thought about this bracket, but Roofy impressed me so much that I genuinely think he's going to move on.
He really did. He had a very, very great first set there. And again, just a 1 HP here, 82 HP there. And we're saying a very, very different story. But here we go. The story of the 0% decks. Talk to me about matchups a little bit.
Yeah, the RG is gonna struggle a lot against that Mega Knight Goblin Hut Zappies deck. We've seen it over and over again struggle against Zappies, and that is without a Goblin Hut on top of it. But it is gonna struggle even more against the P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider deck, which I don't see it ever coming through. So his only real shot at winning is against that 0% win rate deck that SoCal played, and even then it's not a terrible matchup because of the lack of pressure in the RG deck. I'm not sure what I would do if I was Roofy, but I think I would start off with it and try to just get it out of the way.
The other difficulty with that Mortar Minion Horde deck is when your opponent does have great responses to the Minion Horde, it ends up kind of just being a dead card in your hand. You're kind of cycling around it. And we'll see if that ends up happening, because when you look at the decks that SoCal has, there's poison in every single one. There's Snowball, there's Electro Wizard, there's Archers, there's Mother Witch, there's Magic Archer. There's a lot of great ways to get that Minion Horde or make it really ineffective. And then you talk about how heavy these decks are. You know, that 3.9 Royal Giant deck, it's going to run into basically the same thing or something much faster on the other side. And as you said, there's Zappies and Mega Knight in one, there's P.E.K.K.A. and Ram Rider and Inferno Ewiz in the other. Roofy does look like he's in a pretty tough matchup spot. I'd like to see him start with his 100% win rate deck.
Yeah, it's all about what you want to, how you want to take this on. But even then, that 100% win rate deck, if he goes straight into that P.E.K.K.A, it's going to be a struggle as well for him, because he doesn't have a reset for that Inferno Dragon other than the zap. But even then, on the other side, you see the Ewiz does continuously reset that Inferno Dragon. He cannot take care of it. He has no big spell on that side. He has Bar Barrel for the wall breaker. So overall, deck wise, I think Sokol has a big advantage in this matchup.
All right, so we'll see if you are true when we actually see these guys face off. One more best of 5 coming. One of these guys going to be eliminated. Sokol having a much more successful start to the tournament. Roofy struggling a lot. I think after now, after that last set, I think he's probably close to his 30th game here in Gamestars League, where Sokol on the other side of it is just barely over 10. Sokol, though, played uncharacteristically aggressive today, I'd say is maybe the best word to use early on. Maybe he's let those jitters rest a little bit here coming into set 2, Eric?
Yeah, I think it was just getting back into the groove of the tournament standard, of the pressure, everything really building up for him. And I think he should be okay. Towards the end of his set, we saw him really feel like Sokol again, and with the good matchups that he has, I think he should be feeling a little comfortable and just play safe. You don't really need to be over aggressive or do anything too crazy early on. And I think we are going to see the Roofy's RG deck first off.
You see a little bit of the roll of the neck and shoulders there from Sokol, trying to loosen up as he's playing his 15th game here in the competition. Roofy on the other side of it, 29 games this makes, so he'll hit 30 here in this set. So he's had to work very, very hard to get where he is, and we'll see how he fares in this second best of 5 today for these two players from Poland.
Yeah, and Roofy, watching, seeing how many matches Roofy has played, it kind of reminds me of Morden in CRL, where he would play the 2v2, then the King of the Hill, and sometimes the 1v1, and just have like 70 matches played when everyone else had like 20. It seems the same way for Roofy right now.
Yeah, Morton, Javi Catorce, LCOP, guys out there in the space that can play in any set and be successful in all 3 of them, at least back in the old CRL format. And yeah, it does feel like Roofy is kind of replicating some of the greats there when you talk about numbers.
Yeah, only one of those really still playing CRL, but in their day they played enough to make up for not playing this CRL. And this is going to be a tough road for Roofy with this deck. I just don't see how it ends up breaking through. There's so many counters into that RG, and it's so slow that I'm a little worried for him.
Just like that, Flying Machine gonna get picked up by that Baby Dragon. Army of Spear Goblins on the right-hand side. Mega Knight kept at bay. And yeah, Eric, I was gonna actually put you on the spot, but maybe you just answered my question. How does Roofy win this game? I mean, if you're coaching, you're in your player's ear online, and this is the matchup, what advice do you give?
Wait for the mistake from Sokol. At this point, it's not in his hands, unfortunately.
Yeah.
When you run into a matchup like this, and I've spoken about it with my players as well, whenever we would speak about, okay, this is the matchups we're looking for, and this is a possible matchup that we might get. If you do get this matchup, the only thing you can do is wait for a mistake. Drag the game out as long as you can. The more time the game has, the more of a chance you have that it actually creates a mistake out of your opponent. So you're in no rush. If you're Roofy right now, just defend, and pray that within those 5 minutes, one mistake comes through that allows you to win the game.
And a big part of that is confidence that comes from experience, Eric. You have to recognize, look, I may not be winning the game right now, but I haven't lost the game. So let's wait for that mistake. Let's find that opening. One good Royal Giant on the tower is all you need to win the game. One good Fireball on top of some Zappies in a Goblin Hut is all you need to clear the lane. Can you put it together? And Roofy just needs to sit back and wait for it to happen.
That's exactly it. And just relax at this point. Maybe he gives you a ton of Fireball value at some point. maybe he slips up on a goblin hut placement. We've all been there where you place it and then it moves back a little bit because you moved your finger, and there's a goblin hut on the back right. Now you can RG. He has nothing to stop that RG. If you can bar barrel here, go for it. What do you lose, right? You're going into triple elixir. The zappies are far back. That's why I would have loved to see him go a little bit more aggressive, but now he's cycled through and he has another goblin hut again, so that opportunity is gone.
Yeah, and he's put himself in a worse spot now because he has to over defend on the right hand side. There's good fireball value as well on the right hand side. Can hit the magic archer flying machine and a bit of cleanup, so maybe that's what Rufi's holding on for. There, actually, a bar barrel comes out and gets on top. Ice Wizard is focused on that flying machine, and now we get the Royal Giant on tower for a few hits, but no fireball there to take those zappies off the board, and they are slowing him down by a mile.
Yeah, those zappies are so strong against things like the RG, especially if they haven't got to the tower yet, or if it moves back just a little bit, because once they start zapping one by one, it'll never get there. It's like another Ram Rider, and it's so tough. And I think at that point, it just came down to Rufi not pulling the trigger when he had that chance. As soon as you see that goblin hut go down in the back right and the zappies go down so far behind, you gotta just go. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you tried.
And there's two sides to that coin, right? There's the first thing that we were talking about was you have to wait for that opportunity. You have to wait for that moment. And then the second side of it is you have to attack when you're given that lane. And he did not do it, as you were calling out as it was happening. That goblin hut goes down in that back right-hand side. Get an aggressive Royal Giant down. Get an aggressive fireball on top of the zappies, and then deal with the defense. You know that he's going to stay aggressive on the right-hand side. You know you're going to have to spend a little bit there. You're going to have to min-max in that moment. You're going to have to take some damage to get a lot more out, and that is the only moment I think Rufi had to get that damage in, and he just didn't take advantage of it. He let his opponent cycle all the way back around, and you know, the moment that goblin hut goes down, you see the Ice Wizard go down from Rufi, and it feels like that was when the game was over.
Yeah, and I mean, it hurts because he had the shot, right? That's what you wait for all match. But now I'm looking into the next matches. If Rufi reruns this deck, which he's not going to, he's going to the mortar first. At some point, he might have to beat the P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider with it, and I'm not sure how he's going to do that, honestly.
So he's going to be going up against this Tesla Graveyard control style deck, if you will, and a lot of good responses to the Graveyard, Spear Goblins, Goblin Gang, and that Minion Horde, I guess, but all of those units will be susceptible to, of course, the Poison and the Snowball.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But this is a very nice start from him, getting aggressive, making sure that mortar connects, and it's going to be all about placing them in opposite corners. The Goblin Gang should go at the top part of your of the graveyard, and the Spear Goblin should go close to your King Tower to make sure that at least one of those troops stays alive long enough to take care of the graveyard. If he can do that, he'll be okay.
And you have to be okay with being really in command of your cycle with this deck. You have to know that gang is coming back around, and the Spear Goblins. You have to be able to create opportunities with offense whenever that miner is available, knowing that you are going to get back around to your graveyard defenses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And especially with you know, control decks. These are both control decks in their own way. Yes, it's graveyard, but it's a very different type of graveyard than you're usually used to seeing. And this high Tesla gives, that's exactly what I was gonna say, gives a lot of room for a mortar on the other side. And yes, it got distracted, but it's forcing out things that you don't want to have forced out, especially that snowball.
Yeah, and you can see the cycle is getting kind of thrown off here by SoCal because Rufi is demanding stuff out of him, and now we're going to see probably a Bar Barrel plus Snowball combo. No, he goes Tesla defensively here, maybe looking into the future for that next minor cycle, but the Tesla probably won't even be standing by the time Rufi gets back on offense.
No, that Tesla is long gone, and if he does have for poison here, which he does, it should come down as well, and that Mega Minion might actually hit on tower. He got so fortunate there that Goblin lived just enough to distract it and make it hit once there, because that would have been a Mega Minion hit, and those hits do hurt a lot.
Yeah, I want to start seeing Rufi protect his mortar just a little bit more. I don't want to see him get over aggressive and just drop mortar plus cannon card, but it does seem like SoCal's gotten so comfortable with going archers immediately that we can maybe just see mortar plus barb barrel. I mean, excuse me, mortar plus log. Just to get a little bit of stun on the archers, get that first shot out, and then maybe a connection.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that might be something that he does do later on in this game. You know, you only need one of those interactions to actually win the game, to make that mortar connect when your opponent's not expecting it, and then that usually ends up forcing out a panic defense, and it's all a downhill cycle for SoCal if that does happen. And there's a little bit more of a defense onto the mortar.
Yeah, exactly. You saw that cannon cart come out immediately, does get a shot in, demands that Valkyrie to come down because of the Goblin gang. Great dual lane pressure, and this is exactly what Roofy needs to continue to do. Play smart, be okay changing up lanes, settle for minor chip damage when that's all you'll get, and then know when to go in with a Goblin plus minor push.
Yeah, and now that I was gonna say I would like to see a minion horde go down, because you don't really lose anything. It forced out the poison, which I mean, it's good in that case. It's great for Roofy. Now he can defend the graveyards knowing that there's no poison in cycle. If he does go here, the only thing he needs to be worried about is a snowball. Nice fireball to start getting rid of everything and make sure that cannon cart gets value, and that's a clean defense out of him.
Yeah, it actually ends up working pretty well. A bit of an overspend with that miner there. He should have been okay with the Goblin gang going down in that poison, get the miner back on offense. Then you would have been able to get a couple miner shots in, plus a little bit more log chip damage. The last thing you want to do is give away your advantage push by push to graveyard, and then find yourself in the weaker lane of your own tower going into the stronger, or the weaker lane of their tower, because it makes their counter pushes that much easier. And every single one of these hits, Eric, we're seeing about 300 to 400 HP drop off.
Yeah, and it all came down to trusting his defense. He didn't trust it, and that's what's basically costing him the match right now. He's struggling a lot, and it all came down to that miner, because not only do you not have the miner offensive for chip, you took out a panic defense or an added defense that it would have been forced out from SoCal by not having to deal with that miner, and it might cost him the game. It did cost him the game.
It did cost him the game. Miner in, log is in, 684. Roofy actually is able to stay alive, and you see the unamused look from SoCal, kind of looking off to the left-hand side. It was a little sloppy there at the end. It seemed like it was kind of falling apart for Roofy. He was making some really great plays, and then he was making some really questionable plays, we'll say.
Yeah, it all came down to that. And when you're playing mortar, when you see it from people like Igor, from Lapo, from Predator, all these players, they never spend that extra elixir because they just trust the defense. I don't know how many times I've had to, hold on to my seat and be like, why are you only playing Skellies? Why are you only playing Spirit Goblins? And then it works out. You have to trust it. That is how you win. And when Roofy didn't trust it for the first time in that whole match, that's where it got away from him.
That's where it started, that downhill sequence of just graveyard after graveyard after graveyard, being down elixir because of overspending, being out of cycles so SoCal could stay aggressive, stay on offense. And, credit to Roofy for being able to get that miner plus minion horde plus spear goblin push in on the left-hand side, because that created just enough space for him to get back on defense, to throw SoCal off of this offensive kick that he was on, and then get that last little bit of damage in. So going into game number 3, we're going to Roofy's 100% success deck as SoCal continues to run his 0% success deck, or I guess, 0% success deck in this graveyard control Valkyrie Tesla deck, and we'll see if he can pick up a win here.
He has to win eventually, so why not keep going back at it? And that's the roughest part out of a format like this. When you used to play in the old CRL format, you could always change decks no matter what. You didn't have to be stuck with one. Now in CRL, you do have to, preemptively send your decks, and it puts you in the same position here. So you have to be very careful. And unfortunately for SoCal, it's not really working out. But all you need is one win with it. We saw it yesterday. The same thing happened. 3 losses with it, and then just came back and never lost again with it. So who knows?
Roofy goes very, very aggressive there. A late barb barrel comes down and allows that connection on the right-hand side. A bit of a counter push here in both lanes. Roofy just going to eat the damage, I think, from the Valkyrie. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, he eats it because he got a wall breaker connection. So overall, it's basically the same thing. Not too big of a deal there. And a nice little bandit from Rufy, just get those archers out of the way, move on forward a little bit, and pretty slow start to a game that it probably seemed like it was going to be a lot more aggressive very early on.
Yeah, Rufy can just continue to kind of try to disrupt the cycle of SoCal because his damage is going to mainly come from the miner, and it's going to be all about chip damage throughout. Squeezing through wall breakers with Tesla, Valkyrie, Bar Barrel, Snowball seems basically a lost cause for a little while, but it is important to keep them out on the board to get those spells out of cycle from SoCal.
Yeah, and I really like that Mother Witch going down. He kind of used it as if it was like a magic archer, so to say. I like what he's doing. He's going proactive right now, and it seems like Rufy has his confidence back a little bit after winning that last game. Even though it was by the margins that he won by, I think he kind of deserved it after the way the other games went for him in the previous set.
Yeah, he definitely had a very heartbreaking set there against one Hive, and now that Mother Witch getting a lot of value here, getting a bunch of piggies on the board, but of course, Archer's there to help clean up. That is a big, massive connection on the right-hand side. Bandit connects, one wall breaker with a dash there, and SoCal dazed. He doesn't even know what just hit him.
Yeah, the only positive thing for SoCal that came out of all that is knowing that there is no big spell on Rufy's side. So even though he is losing the game, he doesn't have to worry about it going into a spell damage and just getting cycled out. There is no spell damage other than a zap, which is zap. It doesn't really do much unless you're under that 150 mark, probably.
And this Mother Witch causing some troubles here for SoCal as she continues to get played up high on top of that Tesla that is searching for those wall breakers going opposite lanes. So doing a good job of making his deck work in his favor is Rufy, where SoCal is kind of playing a little bit uncomfortably here.
Yeah, he sure is. And I don't think he'll actually be able to bring this back just because Rufy's actually playing this the perfect way. He's always forcing out the Valk early on, and now a miner coming on the left side, and as soon as I say that, he makes a slight mistake there. I'm not sure that that is what you want to do. You want to keep the split lane pressure going because it's splitting all his counter pushes as well, and that's the one thing that he made a mistake on there. Now he has the trio of archers, which is the new card in CR, pushing on the bridge, and just keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to switch anything.
Yes, exactly, and I think that's the most important thing to kind of take away from what you're saying, Eric, is don't stop what's been working. You know, the push has been working just fine, and you know, this is going to be a pretty good defense here from SoCal again, but there you go, miner to the right-hand side, get that damage in, Mother Witch played in the back, get those piggies on the board, although, there you go, high E-barbs to turn that Mega Minion around, and Rufy is starting to have the wheels fall off just a bit here.
I think they fell off completely at this point. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to bring it back. And this is bad news for him because we know that no matter what, or at least in my opinion, SoCal should always win that P.E.K.K.A. versus the RG deck, especially if there's no pressure either. So SoCal in a really, really nice position at this point. And it all comes down to, I don't know how many times we've spoken about this. When something is working, don't switch it up. And a lot of the inexperienced players happens where they want to make something magical happen. They want to, you know, okay, let me take advantage of this. No, just let it go, man. Everything is working in your favor. You're up by over 1,000. Miner your right side, keep forcing that split lane defense, and it's a little bit unfortunate.
And this is why having a team of support around you is so very integral to your success at the highest level at CRL. Even though the format's changed, even though it's much more of a solo endeavor these days, you still need your analyst, your strategist, and your coach, because I gotta say, the biggest problem with Rufy's gameplay is the last 30 seconds to 1 minute. That's it. The rest of the game, he usually has locked down. It's when the pressure starts, the elixir starts flowing more rapidly, and maybe a bit of that inexperience starts to shine through because he starts to try to make things happen instead of sitting with what has been working. And that's where I just think you need someone like you, Eric, to be like, look, man, we've got the first 4 minutes locked down 80% of the time. Now we need to lock down that last 1 minute, that last 10% of the game.
Yeah, and it's so like it's a concept that for us sitting here it's so easy to understand, right? Why would I change anything if I'm winning the game? But the way your mind works when you're in there and you're reaching that triple elixir and you want to go, I really want to win, I really want to win, it's so hard to control, but it is what makes the difference when you go to the highest level. And it will be the difference when you're playing for $30,000. Every match will get tougher and every opponent will be more disciplined.
Yeah, discipline. That is definitely the highlighted word of this entire conversation. It's all about that late game discipline, and that comes with experience. So here we go. Game number 4, 2 in favor of Sokol at the top of your screen. Both these players from Poland, and Rufy playing for his life. This is an elimination game in an elimination set, but Sokol still has 1 life to give.
He sure does, but I don't think he'll need it. He has Pekka Ram Rider against this RG deck, and it's an RG deck with the Ram Rider that can also stop the RG in its tracks. And with no Electro Giant in cycle now, he can actually Ram Rider if he wants to use it. I don't see an issue with that. He has nothing to stop it right now.
Goes Bar Barrel in the center, Mother Witch behind to try and get some of this piggy power on the board, and now we have a very healthy Royal Giant with nothing in its tracks. So Sokol making mistakes early on and paying for it here.
Yeah, and it all comes down to not wanting to be aggressive. You can be aggressive, and if you don't want to be aggressive, then that means you cannot just Pekka in the back. You got to choose one or the other. You can't be half aggressive and half not aggressive. Now you're going to have the Electro Giant in cycle, the Electro Dragon in cycle, and a little bit late on the fireball there from Rufy. I would have liked to see Electro Dragon instead of a fireball. In my opinion, it should always be there for the Ram Rider. It'll stop it every single time, and especially if you already use Cage. So now it's going to be, can you get 1,000 damage on the board? He's playing that Pekka knowing that that's the lane, and I want to see how this plays out because of how slow this RG deck is.
No fireball in yet, maybe hoping to get a little bit more value here at the bridge on top of that Mother Witch. Bar Barrel comes in instead as the Pekka's going to come off with more of a little bit of utility all the way around, whether it's the stun or the slow, or a little bit of Baby Dragon Belch. Does not make it through the tower. About 1,000 HP separating these two players as we are ticking down the final 15 seconds.
He needs to Ram Rider. No Ram Rider coming in. He's not using the Ram Rider defensively, even though it's probably his best defense against an RG on the bridge. The best players in the world, I don't know how many times we've seen them and we've spoken about it. When you have that Ram Rider and you're playing against RG, use it. It is basically a freeze going down on your opponent.
You can see Sokol trying to like create a lane first and then get the Ram Rider down, and honestly it ends up being the correct decision because Rufy's defense has been falling apart in the final minute of every single game. 662 to 710. Electro Dragon, Ice Wiz, and Baby all at the bridge to meet this Mama Pekka once again. And with that Mama Pekka out of cycle, we need to find an opportunity here to get another Royal Giant down for Rufy. But making it very difficult is his fellow Pole.
Yeah, the problem now is that he doesn't have the elixir for that RG. So yes, it was a nice defense, but now you're back into the same cycle. The only difference is you don't have Cage, and he does have Ram Rider. So it's getting a little bit scary every single time that this interaction keeps on happening. And a very nice Bar Barrel for an Ice Wiz that has been very, very annoying for him. And here we go.
Should have
Not
a
sure
Cage.
about that.
Should have a Cage here to respond. Doesn't even decide to use it. Instead goes Royal Giant at the bridge aggressive. I actually like that play. Electro Dragon's not able to reset that Royal Giant though, but 3 dragons on the board along with a Bar Barrel, and a defensive poison comes out at the bridge.
Needs to Pekka.
Can't be overwhelmed.
I thought he was going to just Pekka there. I would have Pekka, in my opinion. You forced out a lot more. But if this Cage goes down before the Ram Rider gets there, that should be a very, very, very bad set of interactions for him. And now it's just going to be Pekka onto the next RG. If there is one, no. And
He has the time, he has the damage, Eric. We're going to game number 5.
my God.
Fireball is in. Nothing is there. And Rufy going to game 5 once again, and that was his 32nd game in the books here. And SoCal now just wishing he could get out of this set. Game 5 once again for Roofy. Here we go, man.
Ram Rider, Ram Rider, Ram Rider. That is all I will say. Yep. Too many RGs came down without a Ram Rider on the other side. He already had the Pekka down as well, so it was going to get tanked for it anyway. And I don't know what to say, really. SoCal, when you play a Ram Rider deck against RG, you got to use it defensively. It's not just an offensive card.
You saw what he was kind of going for in one of those, or a couple of those exchanges where it was just kind of pile everything on at the bridge, keep the Pekka alive, then get the Ram Rider in behind, which obviously that's the best way to do it. But the other better thing to do defensively first is to stop that Royal Giant. Stop it in its tracks. Yes, the Ram Rider may sneak in front of the Pekka later on, but at least you're stopping that damage, because at the end of the day, it was very, very apparent who was favor that match was starting to lean towards. Roofy just able to survive long enough once again.
Yeah, and he gets through with just the necessary, and he gets a win with that RG deck that has been the biggest struggle for him. But now will he be able to win with the other deck, which is also not a great matchup right now? But we see that great matchup or not, he can win it, and it might just be what he needs here. Let's see.
Wallbreaker split there. Mother Witch populating pigs on both sides of it. Royal Ghost working down the right-hand lane, and the Bandit gonna make just enough space before we get a splash damage on that Princess Tower. 2490 on both sides, two very healthy princesses of SoCal.
Yeah, and a nice zap to get that Bandit to actually hit the E-Wiz, and he basically just defended the E-Wiz with 2 elixir instead of having to drop something else down. That was very, very smart out of Roofy.
Yeah, those are really great heads-up plays that probably go a little unsung, but they really do make a difference in the game. Wallbreakers connect on the left-hand side, and nothing here to protect the Mother Witch.
And you can see the glimpses of like the top player in Roofy, right? Like you see the plays that come out of the CRL players, and then he just has those slight misplays or the last minute anxiety that you get right when you're moving through the last minute and you want to close out the match. If he can just get all that down, he's actually really good.
That's why I was saying earlier, I just feel like Roofy needs a coach, he needs an analyst, he needs a little bit of a support staff behind him, because he does have great signs of a very, very top tier player. He just needs a little bit of coaching, as does any great athlete, any great esports player in the world. You're going to be better interaction wise, but you need someone that can, lock down that mental for you.
Absolutely. And maybe a zap coming in here. I'm not sure if he has it. There it is. And that'll mitigate some of the damage. Still a lot going through, but overall not a bad start, especially when you have a Mega Knight deck versus a Pekka E-Wiz. Which is not easy at all, and forcing out a bar barrel. So here we go. We can go wall breakers again.
Yeah, he goes miner to the left-hand side, doesn't send in the wall breakers. Maybe going to try to send them in afterwards. No, probably not. Now that he's going to have to defend here, maybe he can get a little opposite lane pressure going on. Very difficult to just keep going into this same lane over and over with what you were just talking about, Eric. That Pekka versus Mega Knight is not really a matchup you want to find yourself in over and over and over.
And here's again what I was speaking a little bit about. Roofy being smart with it, understanding, okay, he's gonna E-Wiz, so I need to put down another troop in order for my Inferno Dragon not to get reset. But I think this matchup is just impossible, honestly.
Yeah, he sets up another troop to protect the Inferno. It's E-Barbs plus a Mega Knight going right into a Pekka plus an E-Wiz plus a Bar Barrel. All of that, just not what you want to see. And you can see now Roofy, the dejection on his face. That is going to be the end of his run here in Gamestars League. Congratulations to you, young man. You put on a very, very impressive run. A lot of fun to watch. And I truly believe that if Roofy just were to get a coach, or at least one analyst on his side, maybe just someone that knows the game from that side of it more than being a player, he could really go up to that top tier.
Yeah, he has those glimpses. I've seen it in players that have made it to CRL. Those plays, that smart proactive play, It's just the little things that you can work on. And yes, get yourself a coach, or even, you know, another player that might have strengths where you have weaknesses, and work together, build that relationship with each other, and move up the ranks together. There's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes another top player is all you need. But congrats to Rufy on a great run that I think no one expected.
Yeah, Rufy doing a very good job. One of our 2 players that is going to be eliminated today from Group B. We say goodbye to Rufy. He joins Burkan and Jen Aslan from Group A yesterday. And of course, these 16 players in Groups A through D, all exceptional skill level, but not everyone can make it on through to try and get $30,000 on the line. You see, these are the matchups that we saw in game number 5, a very, very difficult one there for Rufy. And now it's going to be about the winner side of the bracket, Eternity and One Hive Hunter. But first, let's take a look at this set in review, Eric.
Yeah, and all the matches, I feel like, not all of them, but the majority could have gone either way, right? Like, this could have been a 3-0 for either of them. It ended up being a 3-2 with some very, very close matches. And it goes to show that this specific group is so close in skill level that every single match has gone 3-2.
Yeah, it's been really, really tough matchups back and forth. You talk about the set, everything going 3-2, but those 3-2 games have also had 1 HP, 82 HP, 6 HP, 110 HP differences, which is crazy when you talk about what that actually means when you're talking about interactions, right? That's literally 1 hit from any card or half a hit from certain cards. So a very great day of play here from Group B so far. As we say goodbye to Rufy, as I just said, Sokol is now still in the elimination side of the bracket. He will be playing the loser of One Hive Hunter and Eternity. The winner of that set, One Hive Hunter and Eternity, will be our first place competitor from Group B. And what a great day it's been so far. It's always fun to go the distance in these best of 5s.
Yeah, it sure is, especially when the matches are this close, because we've seen some you know, game 5s where the matches before then have just been, okay, this player made a mistake, now this player made a mistake, but these have all been really, really interesting matches, and I love to see Clash at the highest level. But now it's going to come down to, you know, the 2 favorites that we called at the beginning of the day. It's kind of something we expected. We saw Eternity and we saw One Hive going into that winner's side of the bracket, but they both got there very, very scarily. It was not an easy road.
Yeah, I love that you actually point that out. Their names do carry a little bit of weight with them, as you and I both expected them to do well in this competition. And with struggles, they have made it here to the finals of Group B, and there it is. There's that final push from Sokol, the overwhelm, everything coming down for Rufy, doing anything and everything he could to stay alive, but it was just not enough. And there you can see that 25% win rate deck at the top of your screen on both sides. Struggles from Sokol and Rufy, but it did turn out that Royal Giant deck seemed to be the weakest of the 6.
Yeah, and it's just the difference, right? In Rufy they both have a 25% win rate deck, but then there's 267% win rates and a 33% for Rufy. So that Mega Knight deck has struggled not only for Rufy, but in general in this competition. I remember day 1, Dimas, who is his comfort deck, even struggled with it. So maybe it's just better to stray away from it if you're playing in the other days of this tournament.
So you thought you were going to get out of here early, go and grab that early lunch or early dinner. No, sir, not today. 15 games in the book through 3 sets. That means we've gone the distance every single time. And now back up to that winner's bracket, Eternity and One Hive Hunter. And then, of course, Sokol will be playing the loser of that for 2 more best of 5s, a potential 10 more games, of course, to find our first and second place competitors. Eric, a lot of back and forth. You kind of highlighted it just a second ago. Some of it was, you know, haymaker here, haymaker there, you know, uppercuts. But this has been much more calculated play through the day. And I expect to see more of that from these 2 gentlemen.
Yeah, and Eternity, we saw him come out swinging with that Sparky deck and the E-Giant deck. He played perfectly throughout those first 2 matches and then really struggled with that Lava deck. So maybe he took this time in between to talk to some friends of his. He has been in the community for a long time, so maybe he has one of his friends who's a Lava expert or plays it a lot better and gave him some tips or practiced it a little bit against these matchups. But the one thing I will say, if he can get that Sparky matchup to go up against the E-Giant, he has an amazing match there. The Sparky is so annoying to deal with when you have E-Giant.
Yeah, and you might look at this and go, well, there's not really any buildings on the board for Eternity. He's got one Goblin Cage, but what he lacks in buildings, he makes up for in single target DPS, whether it's the Inferno, the E-Barbs, the Skarmy, the Prince, or of course, as you were just talking about, Eric, the Sparky. He's got a lot of great responses, but he has to make sure those responses are on top of those big, beefy units in the Mega Knight, in that Electro Giant, and of course, the Balloon. Those are going to be the big threats that Eternity has to look out for. Matchup specifically, you were just talking about, are there any other ones that you're looking for or looking to shy away from?
That lava versus the loon it could get very, very tricky for him. I would not want that to be my lava matchup. He has Inferno Dragon in that loon deck. He has a quicker cycle. He has the miner for the reset on the zap as well. Just so many tools for him. So I think that would be the toughest matchup for Eternity, especially seeing as that Skarmy can get dealt with by the Ice Golem, which you like with Rich loves that card as well, and it will actually get utility in this matchup. So he has great matchups, and that lava is the one that I'm a little bit scared of for him.
Yeah, Ice Golem definitely one of my favorite cards in the game as well, and you know, his utility in the current meta, it's all about really the death damage to me personally. That's what I'm seeing with all those swarm troops. The Skarmy being as popular as it is right now and needing maybe to play defense defensively or a defense differently on the back end, that Ice Golem up high, popping early, slowing things down, getting some of that swarm off the board, something you kind of need to look for when you have it in your hand. Obviously much easier said than done. And then when we talk about that Skarmy, we talk about the single target DPS from Eternity. I mean, he's a guy that's got Bomber out there. He's a guy that's got Skarmy out there. He does play a little bit off meta. Not that these cards aren't popular right now to say.
Yeah, it's just not what you would expect maybe out of him. And even more so, not playing any golem deck is something that is very weird, right? Because he is that golem player, and the only one that actually had some success with golem in the beginning, I remember the first 2-3 days of the Gamestars League, where we saw the golem clones and all these different type of decks that just got absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it was really, really tough there. So Inferno Dragon going to come out and just in range, or out of range, I should say, of that Electro. So we see a NATO come in that will be towered down with the help of the Dark Prince. And, you know, Eternity is getting some damage in on that left-hand side with the Lava Hound, but that's not really the change or the exchange that you want early on.
It sure isn't, and that Inferno Dragon, that will happen to it every single time that you see an Inferno Dragon try to defend an E-Giant, and that was very smart. He baited out the defense on the left so that he can go with those Elite Barbarians on the right. Eternity was so smart with that, and you saw One Hive's face. He took the bait. He knows it. He fell for the bait.
Yeah, exactly. He bit really, really hard on that bait, and you saw how frustrated he was with himself. Baby Dragon plus Bar Barrel come out in defense of that Skarmy. Dark Prince not going to be enough with the help of that Zap and those E-Barbs. Tower down, tower trade, and a bad situation for One Hive Hunter.
Yeah, that is not what you want to start off with. I mean, it is what you want to start with if you're a hunter. It's not what you wanted to follow up with, because the start was perfect for him. And maybe he distracts us with something else, decides not to, and I'm not really sure what the play here is. That's a lot.
Defensive lightning, yeah, it's a lot there. He gets the Baby Dragon down as well. A definite overspend, and now you can see the E-Barbs coming right back in. There's the Zap to reset, and my goodness, that is going to hurt as well. Nice Barb Barrel there at the end for a bit of a recovery, or even an elixir, but a lot of damage in on that King Tower.
Yeah, and I'm sure what Eternity's looking for here is waiting for that E-Giant to go down and then just full pressing onto that 3-crown race. That's the big play that's going to come out, because right now all that One Hive is doing is really just waiting, right? He's holding on, but at some point he's going to have to go in, because he's down on damage. He's not actually winning, and that one hit is actually very, very important for him, because now he is winning with that lightning technically.
Yeah, that is a big Goblin Brawler hit on the left-hand side. We don't see a Skarmy come down defensively because the E-Barbs go down offensively, trying to get more and more damage on that King Tower. He is in the lead for the moment on the Eternal, or Eternity, if you will, at 1179 to 1423. Ice was going to bring that down just a little bit lower, 1273 now, as more Lava Hound damage comes in on that King.
Yeah, and I really like that minor placement. He needed to play it somewhere different than he usually would because that Natal was in hand. And as soon as that Natal came down, you saw that it would have hit the pups, and a good Skarmy overall. It's always kind of you never know what's going to happen, right? When you Skarmy the Dark Prince, which way will it turn? How many will stay alive? That one worked out well for him.
Yeah, worked out very, very well. Skarmy gives him a +1 trade there defensively. Miner going to go into the front. Gets on top of the Goblin cage now, maybe trying to get his Lava Hound to that King Tower. No pup damage in, but one shovel swing from the Miner. 717 to 1273 as a pretty healthy Electro Giant makes it to Eternity's King Tower.
Yeah, and he needs to be careful here. I'm not sure why he didn't just use his... This is very bad for Eternity because he decided not to use the Elite Barbarians on defense originally, which I'm not really sure what the position was there, and he lost it because of that. I don't know if in the replay we'll be able to see it, but he put Elite Barbarians down on an Ice Wizard to try and get offensive when the E-Giant was already down. No, man, just get rid of that. You don't need to put more pressure. You're already up by 500-600 HP.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it's one of those situations, and I don't want to dumb it down to this exactly because obviously the competition and the skill level of these players is much higher. But it's like when you lose a tower early on at a low trophy level, and your opponent goes, okay, now I want to take the King Tower. I'm going to go for the 3 crown over and over and over. And then you find yourself coming back and taking 2 princesses and winning the game. I don't think that's exactly what Eternity did.
It kind of is.
But he was way too distracted by that King Tower, man. He really was.
Yeah, it kind of is, though. Like, I know you don't want to turn it to that, but in reality, that is exactly what happened. There was no reason why he needed to take the 3 crown. He kept pressuring, and it's what we spoke about for Rufy. If we're going to speak about it for Rufy, I'm going to say the same for Eternity. Just because he's the more experienced player, it doesn't get a pass. If something is working, keep it working. You don't need to change anything. And the only thing he changed was that he waited for that E-Giant to cross the bridge so that he can Elite Barbarians further up and try and get that 3 crown when it wasn't necessary.
And One Hive really just completely played into his hand. You saw Rufy with the great bait early on that got One Hive, and One Hive turns and returns the favor with a really nice sequence there at the end. And now we have a healthy-ish Eat Barb connecting on that tower for 2 swings with some help of some zappies. 1660 remains to 2 very healthy or perfectly healthy Princess Towers on One Hive side of the board.
Yeah, and right now it seems like Eternity's struggling just a little bit. Not only, I don't know if it's just matchup wise or if it's a little bit of a mental from that loss in the first game, but One Hive is taking complete control and advantage of the situation.
Yeah, he's got the elixir advantage. He's got units on the board right now, technically being down 2 in the tank, but with a Mother Witch plus a pig on the board, going to get some more damage. And Eternity has to respond here. There should be easy defense with the Mega Knight.
Yeah, and he's playing perfect right now. We should see a Sparky come down to defend this Mega Knight. I'm not sure if he's going to use it or not. There it is, and a flying machine to get onto the Sparky and forcing out an E-Wiz that goes down anyway. And wow, this is playing out very nicely for him because this is Barb Barrel range right now. He doesn't really need to use anything else. It's even Princess Tower if he wants to just, I guess not. I would have let it go to the Princess Tower first and then Barb Barrel so that it wouldn't die. But overall, it's still a good interaction for him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have done. Yeah, I was just going to say a defensive rage. Never a good sign, honestly, when you have 4 piggies coming your way. E-Barb, Princess, Mega Minion all raged up, but only 156 HP remain on that Princess Tower. And now One Hive Hunter does have a good amount of units on the left-hand side. I imagine he just drops a reset here on the right. Yep.
Yeah, there's no reason he should be defending this.
Ooh.
And those elite barbarians coming in are just gonna see if he can take the 3 crown at this point and force out some sort of defense, I guess. And that was very smart, because now those elite barbarians could not go on offense with this push, and there's just not enough time. The only way that he loses this was if he could elite barbarian behind the Sparky with the rage, and something magical happens. And One Hive played so well.
Yeah, this is much more of the calculated One Hive Hunter that you would expect. And yeah, really great recognition and decision-making end game. You know, sometimes the best defense, I've said this for years, is offense, whether it's in sports or especially in Clash Royale. And you kind of painted that picture perfectly there, Eric. Those E-Barbs go down to go for that King Tower. Now that big push on the right hand side, which is really, that's one of the hardest things, is if you get a tower early on against Goblin Giant Sparky, Eric, then you find yourself defending for 4 minutes or whatever, and it's really difficult unless you continue to create dual lane pressure. If you get a Goblin Giant plus a Sparky plus an E-Wiz plus a Mega Minion plus E-Barbs, no one can defend that.
Yeah, and I say it on my stream all the time whenever I'm playing against Sparky and I take tower early on. I tell my stream, like, don't get too excited for those that predicted I would win, because it's just a matter of time before the Sparky connects and I lose this match. And it happens so many times. If you over defend against a Sparky, it always seems like there's going to be one slip up, and One Hive just didn't allow that opportunity to come because he was the one attacking over and over and over again.
I do find that when I succeed against Goblin Giant Sparky, I have to play basically perfect Clash Royale. 2.6, Goblin Giant Sparky, and Expo are 3 archetypes where I feel like you have to play very perfect for 5 minutes.
I agree with you 100%, and that is quite the push to start off for Eternity there. And One Hive knows that, all right, there's nothing I can do at this point.
Goodness gracious, 944 remains, and 4, we'll call it 3.5 for One Hive's sake. Elixir in favor of Han the Eternal, or Eternity, who can just cycle a card here. There he goes. Prince in the back, probably going to try to reset back to 10, get another card down. Maybe he supports the Prince just so he can get back around to his Electro Giant and just ride out this great Elixir lead that he has.
The biggest problem when you have Inferno Dragon is that you can't really play it ever against an E-Giant, because no matter what happens, it's just gonna get nadoed onto it. You play it off angle, it'll get nadoed on. You play it on the straight path, it'll get destroyed by it getting reset over and over again. So it's just a useless card in this matchup, and it hurts because it's usually one of your best defenses.
So 1 bomb drop comes in there from the balloon. Death damage in, but obviously not as bad as it used to be. Baby Dragon tanking for that bomber, which does get a shot in on the healthier of One Hive's 2 towers. But a very nice kind of hit back or strike back response from One Hive to bring that tower down below 1400 HP.
Yeah, now he's in a position where he can actually win this game. He needs to, I would like to see some pressure come out here with the Loon, and there it is. You can't just let it ride if you're that going up against E-Giant. I do like that it's going to force out something to defend, and possibly a NATO here to the King Tower. There it is. So no NATO now, and now he can get some value out of this Inferno Dragon. A little bit unfortunate that it's getting hit by the Ice Wiz, but overall, look at the difference. He went proactive, NATO out of cycle, and now Inferno Dragon does work.
And this is where this gets to be very frustrating to play against, Eric. How do you keep up with the cycle of this deck? And that balloon doesn't connect. Great use of that NATO. Fireball plus Zap come in. Prince connects on that left-hand side, but at this point, it feels like Eternity doesn't even have damage in on the right-hand side because he hasn't been able to focus on it for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I don't like what he just did there with the Ice Golem in front. You want to always save that. There's just too much to have to deal with to waste any type of kiting, and that forced out a Zap now onto the Prince that he doesn't have defensively, and now it's is it game over? I'm not sure.
I think so. Fireball in. Electro Giant gets a little bit, another Zap comes down, and Eternity has to look at this and go, all right, the ball has bounced back in my favor just a hair. How do I defend here and get back on offense? And I wonder if he just turns this into a counter push. Eric, and he throws the E-Giant up front with that tower only at 1048.
Yeah, he definitely can do that if he wants to. No NATO gonna be forced out there, and just not enough elixir to make that happen. He needs to cage here. No cage coming down, and that is game over. Lightning on the left-hand side. You need to secure those defenses. Even if he did kite the prince, it would have taken it out. And One Hive, just a couple mistakes there once the match was in his favor.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you also kind of highlight there, Eric, is that Ice Golem, even if it grabs the Prince, it's still not going to be enough. It's going to need a little bit more defensive love there. Great job by Eternity to not lose his cool once things really started to kind of go in favor of One Hive, and that's what you have to do when you're playing that matchup. And maybe you can correct me here, or maybe you can give me some coaching, but a lot of time you'll be in charge of those games against those fast cycle loon decks, but the second that they get back in the cycle they want and you're caught over defending, it feels like it's just rinse and repeat until you lose the game. Eternity was able to reset that cycle at one point somehow.
Yeah, and I thought it was game over, honestly, when he had that Inferno Dragon lock onto the E-Giant and actually take care of that and the Ice Wiz. And then it was just that he tried to force some, like a weird attack when that Goblin Cage spawned the Goblin. He put an Ice Golem on the opposite lane to try to force extra pressure, and that's where he gave back that elixir. When you're playing against E-Giant and you get an elixir lead, that is the golden sign of you can actually win this. That is the only way you can win this.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what I was trying to get you to highlight. And I appreciate you being able to get there. He was able to get that elixir advantage back in his favor, which it felt like Eternity had lost for so long, which is never what you want when you're playing against balloons. So here we go, game number 4. Every single set has gone the distance so far. Will we see the same here between Eternity and One Hive Hunter in our winners bracket? Winner of this set goes on to our finals this weekend, takes $1,000 and one step closer to $30,000. Here we go.
Yeah.
Game number 4.
And I don't mind that
Party.
zap. I don't mind that zap at all, because it basically made the Goblin Giant lose all of its health. And even though the troops did die after the fact and the Sparky still has a lot of health, it doesn't really matter. He took care of what he needed to take care of more than anything. But this is gonna hit.
Yeah, that was a bit of a panic defense there from One Hive, not getting the cards down in the sequence he wanted. He gets that high, I think it was Mega Minion out on top, and it just doesn't do what he needs, and a big shot comes in on that right-hand side. 6 elixir to respond.
And it seems like we're gonna end up going to another game 5, and why not, right? It's been the theme of the day. Game 5, game 5, game 5. And that was a little bit of... We've spoken a lot of, decksmanship, strategy here and there, but it's just as important to know your opponent's deck as it is to know your own deck. And playing a high Inferno Dragon, knowing he has E-Wiz, is not the right play. And I think it was a little bit of a mishap there from One Hive.
Yeah, it was an easy decision there that kind of One Hive made for Eternity, right? He gets that Inferno Dragon up that high. He goes, perfect, then I'm just going to drop a Heal Spirit, get my cycle back around, heal that Sparky up, get the Electro Wizard down, as he's doing right here. And that was the reason why we saw that connection early on. But One Hive gets a drop of his own on that left-hand side and takes the lead.
It's the same thing we saw last game. Now, One Hive, can you actually close this out? Be patient. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to split lane. Here, he could have actually gone on the right with a Miner and the Loon, and it would have been game over.
And you see there, look at the damage that Eternity. He completely ignores that brawler on the right to build this monumental push on the left, but too little, too late, Eric, and Eternity is going to be facing off against SoCal the same way that we started our day today.
Yeah, and I mean, positive side for Eternity, you already beat him once, so you can beat him again. You know that you struggled with the lava, but you played perfect the other matches, so all you have to do is run it back, and even though you lose this, it doesn't really matter as long as you move on to the next stage. If you go first or second, it is what it is. Just focus on moving on.
What an important set that was between Roofy and One Hive Hunter early on. One Hive Hunter escapes with 1 HP, slips by with 80 something HP, and he's able to turn his really rough start of a day, his struggle from this day, to a first place finish here in Group B. A very exceptional showing from the player from Sweden who was able to keep it together, keep calm, composed, collected, and stay ahead of his opponents. Now, as you were just talking about, One Hive Hunter gets to sit back as Eternity and SoCal battle it out to see who's going to get second place. We'll talk about that in just a second because I want to go back to the conversations we were having about what went wrong between that original set. But first, let's talk about the highlights here in set number 4.
Yeah, and this is early on a nice plays out of One Hive Hunter in this matchup, and then he falls for that bait that I mean, when I saw that out of Eternity, I thought this was game over, right? I was like, okay, he baited perfectly, and then I'm not sure why he was so adamant about winning that 3-crown. Lava is not Golem. It does not do that much damage, and he needs to understand that, and I think that was a little bit of the downfall.
Yeah, going for the 3-crown there, not using the Elite Barbarians in probably the most choice position was some of the reasons that Eternity dropped that game. And then now you can see here in game number 2, mistakes early on, just out of sorts very, very early on. That tower goes down, and then you saw that aggressive push on the King Tower from One Hive made it so that Eternity could not build the push that he wanted on the right-hand side. And that was kind of the story of the day for Eternity and that Goblin Giant deck.
Yeah, and then here we go. This is the first bringing it back for One Hive Hunter, which I'm very impressed with the way he's playing this Pompeo deck. It seems like he's comfortable with it, that to the point where he goes down in the game and then brings it back, and just one mistake was the reason he lost this, but both games he was able to bring it back and really make it work for himself.
Yeah, and you talk about one mistake. There that was in game number 4, getting that Inferno Dragon up high on top of the Sparky, going, okay, Eternity, what are you going to do about my Inferno? He goes, all right, I'll drop a Heal Spirit, Electro Wizard, I'll get a shot in on your tower. And as you can see, with only 10 seconds remaining, he does have about 20 Elixir coming down the left lane, but it's just too little, too late, not enough. And One Hive Hunter knows if there was another minute of gameplay, he would have lost, but there was only 1 second.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you want to throw down 700 elixir, 800 elixir. I don't mind. I already won this game. I'm just waiting for my fireball, my 4 elixir. And congrats to One Hive from pulling all the way back from what seemed to be a lost set early on to Roofy. And it's been I guess in this stage, the comeback stories are over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, and look at this, though. The Electro Giant, Eric, a card that we didn't see at all yesterday. 2 100% performance decks from our top 2 players thus far on the day. So E-Giant not quite fallen out of favor. You see the more traditional version on the right, and of course the version that was made a little bit more popular by Ruben on the left, or at least the Prince coming in for the Dark Prince. And there you go, One Hive Hunter. He battles it all the way through that first set of 5 with Roofy. He goes through. Eternity only drops 1 game, and he is the champion here of Group B. He will join in Thrill and Hugo this Saturday, for some best of 7s. But we have one more best of 5 today between Eternity and SoCal here in Group B. One of them will move on, one of them will be eliminated. And Eric, I'm excited to get back to this conversation because I've been wanting to talk about it. SoCal, it felt like probably actually should have won the first set in regards to matchup. Eternity, though, outplayed him. He played out of those bad matchups. But it wasn't because he straight outplayed him. It was because SoCal also made a lot of mistakes.
He sure did. And now it should be a whole different ball game. You're coming from 2 different places where, yeah, SoCal is coming from the lower bracket, but in this specific situation, you rather be that player because it means that you just won. And on the other hand, if you're Eternity, it means you just lost if you're playing this match, and you're going right back into it. And SoCal, if you know it, and now you know it, he knows it, that if he just plays well, the matchups are in his favor a lot of the times, and he could definitely win this.
So let's take a look at these matchups and what we need So-Called to do, or what Eternity is looking for him to make mistakes with. Again, straight across the board, the first thing I see is the 67% P.E.K.K.A deck and the 33% Goblin Giant Sparky deck. How do you feel about that matchup specifically?
The P.E.K.K.A deck should win that matchup, in my opinion. Just Ewiz on top of the Sparky, or P.E.K.K.A it, and then Ewiz. You have enough answers for everything. The only thing he needs to be very, very careful about is the elite barbarians. He needs to make sure that he always has the ghost with the barbarrel in cycle, to make sure that the split lane push isn't overwhelming, but he should be able to win that. The only thing that could get tricky a little bit is the Ewiz on the other side for that Ram Rider, but it is a winnable matchup for sure.
And when we look at that 25% win rate deck from So-Called, the top right-hand side of your screen, that deck actually matches up fairly well against the Lava Hound deck and the Electro Giant deck from Eternity, Eric, but it just did not go that way for him in game number 1. And in that first set against Eternity, he was just too aggressive with it.
He definitely was. He was, I think for the majority of the day, he's been too aggressive with it. The one time he did win, he was actually able to get it, you know, a little bit more of the calm gameplay. But that Lava should struggle a lot, especially seeing as he's not playing a Lava deck that has arrows. So he can't just take off the archers with arrows and hit the Tesla. If you can split that up, make sure the archers are on the right and the Tesla is on the left, or however you want to do it, there's no real clear way for him to get enough damage where the Lava survives and gets all this done. He just needs to play it the correct way.
So what better way to finish our day than exactly how we started it? Eternity and So-Called going to face off here in a best of 5. 3 decks from each player that they must win with. All 3. Winner gets to go on to our finals. $30,000 on the line. Loser gets to go home and watch the rest of the competition here at Gamestars League with you and myself. This is the final best of 5 of today. Here we go.
Yeah, and this is, it's crazy to know that like this best of 5 is not in itself a $30,000 best of 5, but it is in a way, because if you lose this, you have no more shot at that 30,000, but if you win, you're just as close as anyone else to winning that.
Yeah, it is really crazy when you talk about these elimination matches and what they actually mean. And you and I have the luxury of getting excited about that. These players need to think about anything other than that $30,000 in this moment. Stay focused on the game that they know and love, and not think about all of those zeros at the end of the day. So P.E.K.K.A meets Elite Barbarians. We do get the Lava Hound deck first out of Eternity. Eric, right off the bat, how you feeling about this matchup?
I don't mind it at all, especially the way it's being played right now. He's playing it very, very well, and by he, I mean So-Called. He's playing into his Eternity's playing into So-Called, which is what you want when you're playing a P.E.K.K.A deck versus a Lava. You never want to be the aggressor. You want to be the one that waits. Lava down, okay, let me make my move and then go on. The key for this deck though is you want to have that ghost in front of the P.E.K.K.A. It sounds weird, I know, but it will cause so many problems if you get that in front and force out the Skarmies and force out everything else and get the splash from the ghost, because this is pro tips for everyone there. You put the P.E.K.K.A and right before it crosses is when you put the ghost. They will always Skarmy. They will always play Elite Barbarians. One hit from the ghost will put them into one hit range for the P.E.K.K.A. So it will take care of the whole defense. It is a very, very smart play that he should be doing later on.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the most popular plays in all of CRL, I believe back in 2019.
There it is.
Exactly. The Royal Ghost in front of the P.E.K.K.A. It makes your opponents make mistakes, and it also makes your opponent reticent to play defense. They're always scared of giving you too much value. And then the last part of it, Eric, the most obvious part of it, is you've got the P.E.K.K.A taken for your Royal Ghost usually. So there you go.
Yeah.
Ram Rider connects on the right-hand side. A little bit of Elixir coming down the lane here, but not going to be anything to write home about, as we see a very nice start to this set for So-Called.
Yeah, and he did what he had to do, and as soon as I saw the ghost go down, I knew that that push was going to probably be the winning push it is such a small detail, but such a big detail at the same time when you play this type of deck. And nice Barb Barrel there. Will it connect? It will. And he's definitely Eternity's feeling what I feel. All the Ram Riders against me always connect, no matter how little health I think they have.
Yeah, and I gotta tip my hat to you, man. You called that perfect play-by-play. You were highlighting exactly why the Royal Ghost needs to get in front of the P.E.K.K.A. All the situations where it really reigns supreme, exactly when you want to drop it down, exactly what you're looking for. And luckily for us and for everyone watching at home, we got a perfect first-person point of view of what happens when you do it correctly. And that's exactly what SoCal did. He made that game look embarrassingly easy. And it wasn't because Eternity played poorly. It was just because he did all the things correctly, starting with, I think, again, one of the most important things you pointed out was he made Eternity play into him as opposed to playing into Eternity's Lava Hound.
Yeah, and I gotta give a shout out and credit to where credit is due. Credit to Carpi, who is the best P.E.K.K.A. player in my opinion in the world, who sat down with me for 30 minutes and explained to me every single move that should happen when you're playing a P.E.K.K.A. deck. And that is why I know what I know, not because I'm as smart as I think I am.
That Royal Ghost P.E.K.K.A. combination is so brutal because you've got now a P.E.K.K.A. that does splash damage, that's tanking for a Royal Ghost, that's going to continue to clean up all those distracting troops that keep the P.E.K.K.A. at bay. And then, if all that's said and done, you've got a very healthy Royal Ghost on tower with a P.E.K.K.A. that maybe is on its way out, but damage already done. So game number 2 here coming your way. Game number 1, even though we're not seeing it on the left-hand side of your screen, did go in favor of blue, which is SoCal on the bottom of your screen. So it is a 1-0 start to this set in favor of our Polish player.
And already a better start than he had earlier on in the day. And to just go on top of that goal strategy, it doesn't only work for this. It's something that you should take into account while we wait for this slow push to develop. When you do something like that and play it last minute on the bridge, usually the way our minds work and when we play Clash is we have a defense in mind that we want to happen and that we think is going to work. And when that ghost comes down or when other troops come down last minute, it kind of stumps your opponent into thinking, okay, now what? Wait, my plan doesn't work anymore. And that's another big factor for you to think about when you're playing not only that deck, but many different decks. Play those last minute cards.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I've noticed more and more and more as years have gone by. And the more streams I watch, it's mainly on streams that you'll see, because you'll get to see the drag and hold a lot more in real time. And it is incredible the amount of responses that pros always have locked and ready to go, and how quickly they're okay with changing up their initial defense based off of what their opponent has given them. And that's why those last second plays are so imperative. And at the highest level, you will see so many interactions happen in less than 1 second. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, and it's crazy because when you get to the Morden streams and all this, it's like they're 17 steps ahead of like what me and you are thinking. They're thinking about the last minute troop that he might play, but then if he doesn't play that, what will he play? And he has like 7 different strategies, and it's crazy to see.
And I think the best way to highlight that, once again, talking about live streaming, is you can see players when they're streaming, when they have both of their thumbs holding cards in 2 different places. And I love watching pros do that, because they've got like 6 different interactions that could happen, and they've got different responses on different sides of the boards based on how that comes down. So enough about them. And now we go back to this big Sparky connection. It hits the Magic Archer, connects to the tower, takes the Goblin Hut off the board, and how quickly things can go awry when you're playing against Sparky.
Yeah, I saw that coming when I saw the Magic Archer, and I was just about to point out how good he's doing with his Magic Archers to get enough damage onto the Sparky to where poison or the Barb Barrel takes care of it. But in that specific scenario, he needed to know that that was going to hit tower. And this is even better. Give up the hut, and even though he did give it, wow, that did not hit. I thought that was going to hit on tower. It hits anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was going to hit anyway. It does not initially, but gets another shot in, and this is why Sparky is one of the hardest win conditions to master and then also to beat once you get someone that has it right where they want. And that's Sparky just resetting every single time in the weaker lane of both the players. That splash damage doesn't know how to deal with the Goblin Giant on the front end, can't deal with the Sparky on the back end.
Yeah, and I was just a little bit confused on why he wasn't being a little bit more defensive with his Mega Knight. With the Mega Knight being a pretty decent defense against the Sparky, it will end up going down, but at the end of the day, you secure yourself not having to, you know, actually put anything else down and securing no hits on your tower. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go for a little more Mega Knight onto Sparky defenses. Ended up costing the game, and I mean, I don't expect anything other than going the distance in this set.
Yep, I know. We've gotten it almost all day long. Almost every single set has gone to 5. This one now going into game number 3, 1 in favor of both players. And we finally saw Eternity put together the Goblin Giant Sparky game that he's been kind of looking for all day.
Yeah, and now that that deck is out of the way, the only other one that really is standing in his way is that Lava. He has struggled with it. So do you get it out of the way? Do you go round 2 with Lava right now? You already lost once in this set. You lost a match that you almost had won in the previous set that you played. When do you actually go back to this Lava? Do you save it for last? This is where strategy comes in, and I'm not sure what I would do in his position.
Yeah, I mean, what seemed like was the problem with Eternity early on was that he was not being aggressive enough with his Lava Hound. I remember today when you were like, he just needs to go Abdullah. He needs to go Abdullah Imad on that Lava Hound deck. And then he did, and he had a little bit more success with it. And now it's gone to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He's playing very good in his opening, but he cannot seem to close out the end of his Lava Hound games. You're a Lava Hound pro. You're one of the best coaches in the world, Eric. What's kind of going wrong for Eternity with this deck?
I think it's the deck. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't think it's the Lava deck of choice. You don't have enough pressure and you don't have enough defense. It's not the strongest offensive and it's not the strongest defensive, and that's my biggest issue with this deck. Lava needs to make sense to work, and that's why you don't just see a bunch of different Lava decks come up every meta. It's usually the same Lava deck moving on throughout metas, and the only thing that changes is maybe the bars for the elite barbarians, but those skelly dragons, that Lava Loon, that is where you want to go. This does not have the Lava Loon. You have Inferno Dragon instead. You have a Skarmy instead of a structure. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think that's where he loses.
Yeah, that is a really interesting way to kind of look at or talk about Lava Hound as a win condition, Eric, talking about how, you know, it doesn't really get that fancy every season. There might be one card that comes in or out, whether it's, you know, a Goblin Cage instead of a Tombstone, instead of a Bomb Tower, instead of XYZ. But like you said, it's usually just one card that changes per meta. The rest of it is pretty much sound.
Yeah, and this thing, he actually might have a shot at it now because the Mega Knight came out all the way in the back. It is not something that is going to force out too much of a defense. And Sokol, I'm not sure if he's happy with this or not. He kind of put his head down a little bit. It's not going to get Skarmy. It's going to get Elite Barbarian because he gave him so much time, right? If he went straight on the bridge, there was no way he had enough elixir to defend this.
So, yeah, and I was actually going to say that because it's something you'd mentioned earlier. We're not seeing a lot of aggressive Mega Knights at the bridge when running into these Lava Hound decks. Is that what you recommend as the #1 go-to move in those situations? If you're both at 10 and you're both, let's say, it's basically a clean slate.
Yeah, it depends on the Lava that you're playing against, because if you're playing against this type of Lava, then yes, 100%. When you play that Lava down 7 elixir, there is no way he reaches 6 elixir in time to defend your Mega Knight, right? But if you're playing against one of those Lavas that has a Goblin Cage, then you never want to do that, because Goblin Cage is an 100% defense onto a Mega Knight. You don't have to play anything else, and he can get it down in time. The only difference here is that it's either Skarmy or Elite Barbarians. There is nothing else. And at that point, yeah, you do want to go on the bridge.
Yeah, wise words there, and especially also echoing what you said earlier, Eric, which is it's really important for you to know how to play your deck, but it's also incredibly important for you to know how your opponent wants to play theirs. And, you know, recognizing what we have here, you should know exactly what you're going to run into, and you have to know where the elixir is at. And yeah, that aggressive Mega Knight at the bridge would have gotten a lot more out of that tower initially, and now we see a game number 3 going in favor of Eternity, and this is not what you want if you're SoCal. He's won now with his 2 decks that he struggled with the most. Feels like he might be done, and he might be a little tilted.
Yeah, he looks tilted, and I mean, it's just it's a very winnable matchup in my opinion. He never distracted the lava with the goblin huts. I'm not sure why he would play them too far off. The Mega Knights need to come down on the bridge. You need to force out a lot more out of him, and now you're really in a terrible position going up against the deck that my friend Eternity is most comfortable with. The whole day I think he has 100% win rate with it.
Yeah.
He has not lost, and now you got to beat it twice.
So we've got Valkyrie, Archers, Tesla, Bar Barrel Graveyard going up against this Electro Giant deck, and honestly, it should fare okay, right? Like, you should be able to get enough defense on the board, stack Teslas, create opposite lane pressure with the Graveyard Bar Barrel, but SoCal hasn't been able to put it together with this deck today. What does he need to do here to stay alive, Eric?
I mean, the problem is that Eternity is going to be so confident that I think he's going to play it perfectly and just sit back. The only way SoCal can win is honestly at this point if Eternity gets a little bit aggressive with the E-Giant. But if this goes all the way down to triple elixir, which it very well can, there's no stopping it because it's not a musketeer. It is the archers. So once those archers get nadoed onto the E-Giant, they're gone as well. He needs to spread out everything very, very clearly and not play the Teslas as high as he was doing it early on, because then they could get taken down by the other troops. He needs to play them further back and off to the side.
So he does not go with the deck of at least the one that we're talking through. He decides to go back to what we just saw, and yes, those zappies will help slow down the Electro Giant, but I'm very curious to see how much damage he can actually get on top of all the support troops as this game moves forward. Mega Knight in the back.
Yeah, and another worry I have here is that Inferno Dragon is... does he have Inferno... I don't know. I don't remember. Does he have Inferno Dragon in this deck? The Mega Knight deck?
I can't remember. I don't believe so.
If he does, then he gets no utility here, and a little bit unfortunate on the timing there. It had just had one sliver of health on that Goblin Cage, and it defends perfectly against that Mega Knight. And that's what I was saying. Anytime you play Mega Knight and you're going up against a Goblin Cage, you cannot just Mega Knight. It will get 100% defended every single time by that. And it's a positive elixir trade on top of a counter possibly coming.
Lightning out of cycle, so a Goblin hut comes down as zappies are split in the back to meet this Electro Giant working down the right-hand lane here from Eternity, who setting up with the Prince behind makes it all that much harder for that Mega Knight to be super impactful, so he changes up his defense just a bit, and that's a very nice NATO.
And that could be it.
Yeah, I honestly feel like it might be. Goblin Giant Electro Giant works right on through. Mega Knight distracted by the Prince. Help from the Bomber coming in, and that Electro Giant just doing work on the tower. 8:03 remains, and a good game already out from SoCal.
Yeah, and as much work as that Electro Giant was doing, that 2 elixir Bomber was going ham on that offense. It was going in on the Bar Barrel, on the Mega Knight. It is crazy how much damage it does. It is so cheap, but the amount of sheer power that small little bomb has is insane.
Yeah, I'm actually a really big fan of the rework on the Bomber, and now we maybe see, we see a little bit of aggression here from SoCal. I mean, what else are you going to do at this point, man? You got 539 HP remaining on the tower of the last game of your competition, most likely. Got to do something. Got to make something happen.
Yeah, you got to make something happen, but I really like that Eternity here was not worried about losing his offense and saying, oh wow, an E-Giant. He defended that E-Giant with that E-Giant perfectly. At the end of the day, yeah, it's 8 elixir, but what other defense did you have that would have cost you less?
Yeah, and that actually is one of the things that I personally am not comfortable with yet in decision making with the E-Giant, since it is a newer card in the game and I haven't played with it a lot, but knowing when to use it defensively up high, really brilliant stuff. He does it again here. He gets a nice E-Giant up high with all of these Zappies plus the Magic Archer, and he's also making it so that those Magic Archers are not lining up. So very good decision making here, and he knows, look, all I have to do is sit back for 90 seconds and not take 1,200 damage. That's my only goal.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw there, one of the Zappies wasn't taking damage, and it was the closest one in radius. I don't know if it was like a bug or what happened. If it, I was very confused by it, and I'll go back and look at that. Maybe it was targeted onto the Prince, and I'm just wrong. But that was very, very odd, and Eternity seems to have been moving on here with what we expected in the group.
Yeah, that's interesting that you point that out, because I was kind of looking at it as well, and I was like, what is happening? All right, I'm just going to ignore it. So lightning comes down, and it feels like this is it, man.
Yeah, that's all she wrote. He no longer has anything to lightning block. NATO should go down onto the tower, and there it is. So-called going down 3-1, and Eternity, look, this is his best deck. I didn't expect anything other than a win from him.
Yeah, he did very, very well with that deck. He played very calm with it. Knew when to E-Giant in the back, knew when to E-Giant at the bridge, which is something that you have really kind of pointed out as one of the most integral parts of being successful with the Electro Giant. When do you go hyper aggressive, and when do you play it in the back? Only 3 Electro Giants played, which seems kind of shocking to me. Only 1 offensive and 2 defensive, and that's all it took to take that game. And you know, both of our competitors today that found themselves being in first and second place, you know, they had the highest seed coming in, if you will, but they also had a lot of struggles today.
Yeah, they sure did. And after this first match, I thought Sokol was going to play a set that he was going to be very comfortable in. The play from this P.E.K.K.A deck and the way he played it was so top notch that I was like, okay, Sokol starting off has the confidence coming off a win, and then just mistakes after mistakes on this. And then once you give a player like Eternity all the confidence and no pressure in a set, he's going to roll with it.
Yeah, and one of the worst things that you can allow that Sparky to do is get a couple shots off that are cleaning things up. It's just really swinging that elixir momentum in favor of your opponent. And those Sparkies in that game got, I believe, 3 or 4 shots off on troops that were trying to defend, and of course also hitting that Princess Tower. So Eternity did have a little bit of difficulty making that deck work for him, as he did with this deck, but those 2 games back-to-back in game 2 and 3 were all he needed. He gets the 2 worst decks out of his way on the day, and he comes out with this beast of an Electro Giant deck.
Yeah, and the funniest thing of everything is where you said 3 Electro Giants played. Yeah, and 2 of those were defensive. So he only won with 1 push, and it goes to show how strong that E-Giant is. If you just get the right push, that's all you need, 1 time.
And really nice patience and decision making there at the end of that game from Eternity, going, okay, I'll give up my offensive pushes, I'll get these Electro Giants down defensively, I'll save my NATOs to pull in more of those troops to clean up Sokol's offense, and I'll just cycle spells if and when I can. But if is the most key word of that, and he was very patient.
Yeah, he sure was, and congrats to him on bringing it back after a rough start to the set, after already losing one previously to One Hive, to stay mentally strong and know that he can make it into this, that he just needed to get that lava deck out of the way, and he's moving forward. And honestly, after these first 2 days, I'm really excited for the weekend. You have 2 players in this and 2 players in the previous bracket that have showed some very, very high levels.
Yeah, and they've had to battle through it. You know, Hugo yesterday was a pretty dominant force. Inthrill on the other side, back and forth and back and forth. Same thing today for both of our competitors in One Hive Hunter and Eternity. They had a lot of tough sets. They both went the distance today, and honestly, they both came out on top, not in a super surprising fashion, because you and I were both expecting them to play well, but they just barely made it.
Yeah, especially One Hive, man. That last set he played, yeah, he took control and he won like he should. But before that, getting away with the 1 HP and everything was something else. And there he is. How's that 1 HP win for you?
Hello, guys.
Yeah,
that game was really close.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about your first set, One Hive, because, you know, it felt like you were playing against probably the underdog in the set in Rufy. It felt like he was maybe the person that was coming in as the fourth seed. He made you work for it. 1 HP, 82 HP, going to game 5. How were you able to kind of survive that set?
Rufy, he really sniped me. I think he paid a lot of attention to my decks and he tried to counter me really well. I saw that he did the same thing to Predator, who unfortunately didn't go through to the next stage because of that. So I think he paid a lot of attention to that, and it really frustrated me a lot in the moment. He kind of got in my head, and in one game everything just went wrong. So I just had to mentally reset a bit and try to get through in the end. And it got down to the really close games, and I luckily got through.
Yeah, and then you move on and you play Eternity, which is someone that I think you know more of. I'm not sure how many times you play him, but you definitely know more of him. Did you like the way the matchups were set going into that set? How did you feel matchup wise?
Yeah, so my entire plan with this, I didn't really pay any attention to Rufy. I knew that even if I lost to him, I would pretty much win the rest of my games, and I paid all of my attention to Eternity. And that's why I picked my deck, so I would get really good matchup against him. So that was my plan going into this, that I should beat Eternity any day of the week. Even though he's a great player, I just knew that I had the better matchups.
So matchups being really, really important. You talked about that kind of maybe tilting you or frustrating you. And we could see it on broadcast. We could definitely see you kind of getting in your own head. But like you said, you were able to reset. Now, as you're getting ready for finals this weekend, you're going to best of sevens. It's going to be a longer day. You're going to come up against better competitors. How are you going to keep that mental strength as you move forward? Because, you know, the moment we saw you get tilted, man, it felt like your gameplay went down in quality, but then we saw you reset and go back to what we were used to seeing out of you. How do you plan on keeping that mental fortitude through this weekend?
I think honestly I didn't really pay that much attention to Rufy, and that was on me. That was my mistake. So the next time I'm gonna focus and try to look on my opponents, what they like to play, and be more ready for what they can bring. So if I get decent matchups, then that wouldn't be a problem in my mental game. So that's my plan.
Great, man. Oh, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Last question. Are you excited for best of sevens? Because I haven't played a best of 7 in like 3 years. So I don't know if you have. And are you excited for the change into that?
Yeah, I haven't played best of 7 in a long time, over a year, I think. So that would be interesting to see. And I think it can be very interesting because now you have to win one game with each deck, and then you have to win with 2 of them again. So I'll have to see. I think it's a good plan to have 3 separate decks. So if you win with all of them once, then you can pretty much select the 2 best against your opponent. It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to play out, but I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, you and me both. I think it's going to be an incredible display of strategy this weekend. So let's give you some rest. Let's get you reset. We'll see you back on Saturday and hopefully on Sunday as well. Congratulations, my friend. Great stuff. And hopefully we'll see a lot more of you soon here, of course, in Gamestars League and, of course, over at CRL as well.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Take care, man. So, you heard it from the champion of Group B himself. He underestimated his opponent coming into the day. And, Rufy was a guy that impressed you and myself. I saw people talking about him in the YouTube chat, comments, and on Twitter. People love an underdog story, a Cinderella story, but he wasn't quite able to pull it out today. As we look at our brackets, Eric, let's talk about the 4 that made it and the 4 that did not.
Yeah, and I really, really am excited, like I said earlier on, with Hugo, One Hive, Eternity, and Inthril all showing so much talent. A mix of experience and rookie in Inthril. And then we have so many different types of players still looking to move on forward. And this weekend is going to be insane, especially with that best of 7 format that we just spoke about. And on the other side of it, Aslan, really the surprise for me that did not get to move on and did not win a game.
Yeah, that is a crazy thing for you to point out. So we'll be back tomorrow with Group C. 4 more players, 5 more best of 5s. 2 players will move on and get closer to that $30,000, and we will be saying goodbye to 2 more players as we did today. Eric, Benemu, and myself will be here at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 6 p.m. CEST or Central European Summer Time. Eric, do you have anything to leave our audience with before we say goodbye?
Get ready for tomorrow, and I hope you enjoyed the long day of matches today, because 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-1. That was a lot of gameplay. And if you missed anything, if you're getting here late, go and watch that first set between Roofy and One Hype Hunter. I'm sure you will enjoy it.
Yeah, and make sure you don't miss anything here at GameStars League. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. You can also follow me and Eric on Twitter. He is EB7. I am Andrew Guy. We'll be back tomorrow morning, as I said. Thank you so very much, and keep on clashing.